Chapter 1150. Chu Yu. The few of them exclaimed, and their hearts almost jumped out of their throats. At this moment, a tyrannical wave spread rapidly from the top of the mountain. Luo Yanming knew that something was wrong and immediately retreated with the two of them. The few of them only felt a terrifying and vast force attacking them, and their bodies were instantly sent flying. The world was spinning. In just a moment, they fell to the ground together. Bang! A dull sound was heard. Luo Shishir endured the pain on her back and forced herself to look up, only to find that she had been sent out of the Thousand-Wine Mountain. Luo Yanming and Zhuosheng were the same, and they fell beside her. Looking up from here, the Thousand-Wine Mountain was still quiet, and the wind rustled the leaves as if nothing had happened. Luo Shishir's heart seemed to be clenched by something. "Shishir, how are you?" Luo Yanming got up with difficulty, ignoring the pain on his body, and took the lead to ask worriedly. Luo Shishir shook her head. "Fifth brother, don't worry. I'm fine." But Luo Yanming noticed that her expression was not right, so he followed her gaze. When he saw the pitch-black and extremely silent Myriad Wine Mountain, he was shocked as well, and his pupils instantly constricted. How could this be? Although this was the foot of the Thousand-Wine Mountain, it was definitely not to the extent that they could not see the situation on the mountain. Moreover, the commotion just now was so shocking. Logically speaking, no matter how far away they were, they should have noticed it. But now, the Thousand-Wine Mountain seemed to be quiet. It seems that there's a special barrier on the Thousand-Wine Mountain. Zhuosheng bared his teeth and stood up. Otherwise, it definitely wouldn't be like what we're seeing now. This also explains why there was such a commotion on the Thousand-Wine Mountain, but no one came. Zhuosheng's words enlightened Luo Shishir and Zhuosheng. No wonder. A light flashed across Luo Yanming's mind. The opening time of the Thousand-Wine Mountain every day is specially set. I didn't think about it before, but now that I think about it, isn't this very strange? Perhaps, some elders' weapon refinement often attracted Tianlei, so they set such a rule. Also, in order not to arouse everyone's suspicion and worry, they specially prepared a barrier to hide everything. If you don't stay on the Thousand-Wine Mountain, no one will know what happened there. Luo Shishir continued his words thoughtfully. The three of them fell into a brief silence. This matter was actually very easy to understand. Just a moment ago, they were still on the mountain and could clearly see the two Tianlei bolts descending. Now, as soon as they were forced out, everything disappeared before their eyes. But Chu Yu is still inside. Zhuosheng scratched his head. Luo Shishir and Luo Yanming looked at each other and saw the worry in each other's eyes. The power of those two Tianlei bolts was truly astonishing. Even they didn't dare to face it head-on. Not to mention Chu Yu, who was only at the early stage of the Seventh Order. The Thousand-Wine Mountain is the border between the Celestial Physicians area and the Weapon Refiners area. There should be elders there, Luo Yanming said slowly. We shouldn't be able to get in now. Luo Shishir hesitated for a moment. I'll go look for Master. Her master was naturally elder when she. Now? Luo Yanming looked up. It was almost dawn. It didn't seem appropriate to look for the elder at this time. As if reading his thoughts, Luo Shishir shook her head. This matter must be resolved as soon as possible. The longer he stays inside, the more dangerous it will be. That Tianlei was no joke. Luo Yanming hesitated for a moment and finally nodded. Okay. Then I'll wait here. You guys go and look for Elder Wen Shi. At the same time, Chu Luyue, who was on the top of the mountain, was in a stalemate with the two Tianlei bolts above her. Yes, a stalemate. When she sensed that the two Tianlei bolts were attacking her, Chu Luyue withdrew her hand from the spring water, shook off the water stains, and stood up. But when they arrived in front of her, the two Tianlei bolts stopped at the same time. They were only a few steps away from her. Chu Luyue looked up. Standing close to it, one could clearly see the two streaks of heavenly lightning flowing with brilliant colors. The pressure on them was even more shocking. But they didn't move. They hovered in the air and seemed to be hesitating. If someone could see this scene at this moment, they would definitely feel that it was extremely absurd. Whoosh! Chu Liuyue's palm flashed with black light, and the dragon abyss sword was already held tightly by her. The simple and heavy sword reflected a cold light. It was a dignified and boiling battle intent. Buzz! Abundant force poured in, and the dragon abyss sword hummed. Chu Liyue narrowed her eyes, and the corners of her mouth slowly curled up into a presumptuous smile. Which of you two will go first? Master. Are you inside? Master. Elder when she was resting when he suddenly heard a hurried knock on the door. Recognizing that this anxious voice came from his newly accepted disciple, Luo Shishir, Elder when she's heart skipped a beat. With a thought, the door was opened. Luo Shishir and Zhusheng were standing at the door, looking nervous. What's wrong? What happened? Elder when she frowned and asked. Suddenly coming at this time, it was definitely not a small matter. Luo Shishir said anxiously, Master. Quickly go to Thousand Wine Mountain to take a look. Chu Yu is trapped at the top of the mountain. What? The remaining half of drowsiness completely disappeared, and Elder when she suddenly opened his eyes and jumped down from the bed. You said Chu Yu is trapped at Thousand Wine Mountain? Yes. And when we came down, there were two Tianlei. Elder when she's expression tensed up, and he immediately walked out. Master will go now. Luo Shishir and Zhusheng both heaved a sigh of relief. If they could catch up quickly, Chu might be safer. You two stay here. Elder when she suddenly turned around and said with a serious expression. But, also, don't mention what happened tonight to anyone. Elder Wensi had always been smiling and amiable before. This was the first time the two of them had seen him with such a serious expression. Their hearts couldn't help but jump, and they nodded subconsciously. Master, don't worry, we will definitely keep our mouths shut. Elder when she stared at the two of them, and only then did he let out a sigh of relief. All right, don't worry too much. I'll go take a look first, Master, please help me bring Chuyu back safely. Luo Shishir couldn't help but say. Elder when she blew his beard and glared, even if you don't say it, I will still catch that kid. Being trapped at Thousand Wine Mountain at this time, he definitely didn't come down in time. The two of them kept quiet guiltily. Actually, it wasn't that late. It was just a little late. Who knew that things would turn out like this? Watch how I teach this kid a lesson later. Elder when she was furious. This was only the first day he officially became a student of the academy. And he had already caused such a big trouble. At first, he thought that the kid was very obedient, but who knew, hey, when she? What are you doing here? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1151. Hearing the sound, the three of them turned their heads to look. Under the moonlight, they saw a familiar figure walking over unsteadily. It was Elder Huafeng. Seeing the wine pot in his hand, Elder Wensi's face was immediately filled with disdain. How much did you drink? Elder Huafeng chuckled. Not much, not much. I just took a few sips. Why are there two other students here? He took a closer look and recognized Luo Shishir and Zhusheng. The way he looked at Elder Wensi was even stranger. You're still bringing the children to train at this time? This is too much. Even if he wanted to give his students special treatment, there was no need to be so active, right? Today was the first day they officially acknowledged their master, right? Elder Wensi looked at him as if he was looking at a fool. Do you think I'm such a person? Use your brain to think clearly. Luo Shishir and Zhusheng, Elder Huafeng actually thought about it seriously and shook his head. TSK, then what are you doing? Elder Wensi couldn't be bothered to waste time with him and hurried forward. There's an accident on Thousand Wine Mountain. What? These words instantly woke Elder Huafeng up. What happened? Oh. Tell me about it, quick. I'm still counting on the spring. That kid Chu Yu is trapped in Thousand Wine Mountain. Elder Wensi said concisely. Oh, what? Elder Huafeng's eyes widened. You mean Chu Yu? Although there were many students in the academy, they might not know all of them. However, Chu Yu was personally recruited by them. Moreover, Chu Yu performed well in the assessment at the beginning of the month and had just acknowledged Wang Zheng as his master. It was difficult for them to forget him even if they wanted to. Elder Huafeng didn't care about drinking anymore and hurriedly followed him. I'll go with you. Elder Wensi glanced at him. Elder Huafeng coughed hard. I'm just worried about the safety of the children. Elder Wensi sneered. This old thing was just doing it for the spring water. However, he didn't expose him. At this time, it was always good to have more people. Furthermore, compared to the other elders of the Master Teacher Academy finding out about this matter, it would be much safer for him to call Radiant Peak over. He turned around and looked at Luo Shishir and Luo Shishir. Stay here. Wait for Master to return. The two of them had no choice but to agree. They watched as the two elders left. A moment later, when they had completely disappeared from sight, Zhuosheng could not help but mutter, Shishir, don't you think that the elders seem to be very secretive about Thousand Wine Mountain? Luo Shishir nodded. From the looks of it, there was clearly some secret hidden on Thousand Wine Mountain. Her intuition told her that it was better for them not to know too much. With the help of the two elders, he should be fine. Luo Shishir exhaled softly, but her heart still felt like it was being weighed down by a heavy stone. Zhuosheng thought about it and comforted her. Don't worry, at the very least, he still has a crimson-tailed red phoenix by his side. There won't be any problems. Luo Shishir could only nod. I hope so. On Thousand Wine Mountain, as soon as Chu Luyue finished speaking, the surroundings seemed to become even quieter. The two Tianlei seemed to have stopped above her head, motionless. Chu Luyue raised her eyebrows and pointed at the first one. Since you came down first, then, you first. Chi. Tianlei, who was pointed at, suddenly took a step back. Chu Luyue raised her eyebrows and pointed the tip of her sword at the other one. You? Chi. This one retreated even further. Dumpling glanced at him disdainfully. Bah. Useless. Chu Luyue shook her wrist. Are you coming down or not? Her voice was clear and carried a hint of nonchalance. TSK. To think that she thought that the Tianlei she encountered this time would be different from the previous ones. Who knew that it would be the same in front of her? Chu Luyue felt a headache coming on. Logically speaking, she was not sharpening her sword this time, nor was she forging any yuan tools. Why did these Tianlei have such a reaction? Boom! At this moment, the third Tianlei descended. Chu Luyue looked up, a little impatient. There's more? Then we'll talk about it when all of you are here. When Elder Wensi and Elder Huafeng arrived at Thousand Wine Mountain, the first thing they saw was Luo Yanming standing at the foot of the mountain. Master? Luo Yanming was also shocked when she saw Elder Huafeng. Why is my master here too? Elder Huafeng widened his eyes. Ha! On the way here, he was still complaining to Elder Wensi that his new disciple was too active. In the blink of an eye, he saw that his new disciple was also here. Elder Wensi glanced at him disdainfully. Who's stronger? Elder Huafeng coughed and wiped the sweat off his forehead. It's fine, it's fine. At least our disciples are only outside. The most important thing is the one inside, that's true. Elder Wensi nodded in agreement. I wonder what Wang Zheng's expression will be when he finds out about this. Anyway, there's someone here to be the scapegoat. Yanming, you go back first. Leave this to us. Elder Huafeng urged her to leave. At this time, if she's still here, isn't she looking for trouble? Then Shishir and Zhuosheng, Luo Yanming looked behind the two. There was no one. The two of them didn't come. Elder Wensi also added. You should go back as soon as possible. In addition, don't tell anyone about what happened here today. Hearing the seriousness in the two elders' words, Luo Yenming thought for a moment and immediately agreed. Yes. After Luo Yenming left, the two of them looked at each other. Let's go up and take a look. As Elder Wensi spoke, his figure flashed and went straight to the top of the mountain. Elder Huafeng followed closely behind. After flying into the air, Elder Wensi waved his sleeve and threw out the green jade token. Buzz! The void shook. Ripples spread out like water. This scene is so familiar, Elder Huafeng suddenly muttered in a low voice and nudged Elder Wensi with his elbow. Hey, Wensi, don't you think this thing happened in a dream? Elder Wensi looked at him speechlessly. Is this old thing really drunk? He reminded him, kindly, it's not a dream, it's real. Have you forgotten that a few years ago, when you were drinking on Thousand Wine Mountain, you were caught red-handed by that scourge? Elder Huafeng's eyes slowly widened, and the scenes that he had almost forgotten flashed through his mind. A trace of panic flashed in his eyes. Damn. Shut up. As he spoke, he quickly looked around, subconsciously grabbed the wine pot at his waist and stuffed it back into his green jade token. He looked as if he had a guilty conscience. Elder Wensi said bitterly, look at how useless you are. Could it be that scourge can jump out now and snatch your wine? Elder Huafeng was about to argue when the barrier in front of him suddenly opened. Boom! A bolt of heavenly thunder crackled as it charged towards the two of them. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from the Love Network. Chapter 1152. What the hell? Elder Wensi's reaction was extremely fast. With a wave of his sleeve, a powerful force flew out. Boom! The two forces collided head-on. An intense collision. After all, Elder Wensi was one of the top experts in the academy. With this attack, the power on the Tianlei was immediately weakened by a lot. The originally dazzling light instantly dimmed by a lot. Who summoned them? Elder Wensi aggressively stepped into the enchantment. Elder Huafeng followed closely behind. Where's that kid Chuyu? He didn't get killed by the Tianlei, right? As soon as he finished speaking, he saw Elder Wensi's body stiffen. He was looking ahead with a shocked expression, as if he had seen something unbelievable. What are you looking at? He followed Elder Wensi's gaze and looked over. Halfway through his words, he stopped abruptly. He saw a youth standing on the top of Thousand Wine Mountain. His figure was a little thin, but he was still tall and slender. At this moment, he was standing beside the spring, holding a black longsword tightly in his hand. The force around him was surging. It was Chuyu. At this moment, two bolts of lightning were hovering above his head. The Tianlei was only a short distance away from him. As long as he took another step forward, he would be able to easily crush him. But for some reason, the two Tianlei didn't move. They just floated there quietly. As for Chuyu, his back was straight and he held the sword in his hand. He didn't seem to be afraid. This scene was so strange that the two elders, who were used to seeing storms, couldn't say anything for a while. The young man seemed to have noticed the commotion and looked over. Elder Wensi, Elder Huafeng, you're finally here. Chu Liuyue's face was filled with surprise and joy, as if he had heaved a sigh of relief. The expressions of the two elders were even more strange. This wasn't right. Luo Shishir and the others said that you were trapped in Thousand Wine Mountain, Elder Wensi said hesitantly. You don't look like it. Chu Liyue raised his sword and pointed at the two Tianlei above. That's right. The students were trapped here. Didn't he just send one flying? In the end, it was caught by Elder Wensi. Chu Liyue thought so in his heart, but the expression on his face did not reveal the slightest flaw. The two elders glanced at the two Tianlei, which were still as immovable as mountains, and then looked at each other with strange expressions. No matter how he looked at it, he didn't look like he was trapped. When they saw how nervous Luo Shishir and the others were, they thought that Chuyu was in a life-and-death situation. But looking at it now, why was it completely different from what he had expected? Elder Wensi waved his hand. Don't worry. With us here, that thing can't hurt you. Just come over. Chu Luiyue looked down hesitantly at Dumpling, who was squatting beside the spring without even moving her butt. Elder, can this student leave after a while? Elder Wensi was puzzled. You still want to stay here? He turned his gaze and finally saw Dumpling below. This is your contracted divine beast? If I'm not wrong, that's a red-tailed phoenix, right? Chu Luiyue nodded. TSK, the color of this red-tailed phoenix is actually so pure and rich. The power of its bloodline is probably very shocking. Elder Huafeng's eyes lit up. He had seen other red-tailed phoenixes before, but this one was definitely one of the best among them. This kid is really lucky. He can even contract such a divine beast. Elder Huafeng smacked his lips. You're staying here for this? Chu Luiyue hesitated for a moment, but still nodded slightly. There was a secret hidden in the spring of Thousand Wine Mountain. From the looks of it, the two elders most likely knew about it. Then, there was no need for her to hide it. No wonder. However, this won't do. Thousand Wine Mountain has never allowed students to stay too long, not to mention that it's already forbidden to stay here. You'd better bring the little guy with you and leave with us as soon as possible. Chu Luiyue actually wanted to leave too. After all, the two elders had already personally come looking for her. If she stayed any longer, they might discover something. She walked over and picked up Dumpling. Dumpling looked at her eagerly. It was almost there. It was almost there. It would be a waste to leave now. Chu Luiyue glanced out of the corner of her eye and saw that there seemed to be a light flickering in the spring. She took a closer look and was suddenly stunned. Because it wasn't the shadow of Tianlei reflected on the water surface, but the Tianlei that really existed. At some point in time, several Tianlei had already gathered in the spring. They were like silver dragons swimming underwater. Chu Luiyue held her breath. Who would have thought that there was such a huge secret hidden in the spring? What Dumpling was waiting for was this. Chu Luiyue lowered her eyes slightly, suppressing all the emotions in her eyes. When she raised her eyes again, her face was already calm. Just as she left the spring with Dumpling, two Tianlei in the sky suddenly fell one after another. Plop. Without looking back, Chu Luiyue knew that it was the sound of Tianlei landing in the spring. Then, the third heavenly thunder, whose power had been weakened by Elder Wenxi, also rushed over. Elder Wenxi and Elder Huafeng looked at each other. This kid should be able to guess it. Chu Yu, pretend that you never saw what happened today. Before Elder Wenxi could finish his words, a few more loud sounds came from the sky. Boom! 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 Another few Tianlei appeared one after another. This time, another loud and proud laughter came at the same time. Ha ha ha. I've finally broken through. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1153. Before she finished speaking, a figure suddenly stepped through the air and came over. Chu Luiyue looked up and saw the person's robes fluttering. With a few strides, he had crossed quite a distance. She did not even see the other party's movements clearly and he was already in front of her. Her heart skipped a beat. This person's strength was probably stronger than Elder Wenxi and the rest. Again. That person stood in the air and waved his arms. Dark clouds surged in the sky. 3 more Tianlei appeared at the same time. These, in addition to the previous ones, were a total of 9 Tianlei. Chu Luiyue's eyes stared intently. Weapon Refinement Master. This was actually her first time officially seeing a Weapon Refinement Master. Previously, when she had sharpened the sword herself, she had relied on Taizu's help to succeed. Chu Luiyue's heart seemed to be stirring. Weapon Refinement Masters, to her in the past, were merely legendary existences. Distant, mysterious, as if they could never be touched. Even though she had once forged the Cloud Sky Copper sword with Taizu's help, strictly speaking, that was not considered weapon refinement in the true sense. After all, The cloud sky copper sword already had a sword shape and an embryo at that time. What she had to do was to borrow the tianlei that Taizu had attracted to sharpen it. And at this moment, she finally knew what weapon refinement was. That person stood in the air and waved his hands. The tianlei seemed to be under his control and flew down. Plop. One by one, the tianlei fell into the mouth of the spring. The shocking pressure and aura almost pressed Chu Luiyue until she could not breathe. She should have retreated to avoid being accidentally injured. But her feet seemed to be nailed to the ground and she could not move. Silver light flashed in the mouth of the spring. Even though she was already some distance away, Chu Luiyue could still see the scene inside clearly. Countless tyrannical forces intertwined. Right at this moment, that person in the sky suddenly raised his hand. Chi! A green glow flew up from the mouth of the spring. It fell into that person's hands. Chu Luiyue looked up and saw that it was a short sword. The short sword was green in color, as clear as jade, and emitted a faint luster. The sword was thin and narrow, but extremely sharp. The pressure was astonishing. Whoosh! That person held the sword and lightly drew a line in the air. A huge black spatial crack suddenly appeared. Vaguely, there was the sound of a tiger's roar. This was enough to show the power of this forged sword. Chu Luiyue was shocked. This was her first time seeing a true weapon refiner forge a divine artifact. Even though she couldn't see everything, what she saw so far was enough to shock her. Seize Tianlei's power to forge the world's divine weapons. In an instant, it was as if the entire world was under his control. Although the expression on his face did not change much, Chu Luiyue's heart was uncontrollably stirring up huge waves. Her black jade-like eyes were bright and resplendent. 9 tianlei. Then, that person must have forged a top-notch high-grade divine artifact. And this person was at least a high-level armament master. That's right. That's right. You didn't waste this month of my efforts. That person was obviously very happy as well. He held the short sword in his hand and said happily. But at this time, the expressions of Elder Wenxi and Elder Ouyang were not so good. Elder Huafeng was the first to lose control and shouted, "Ouyang! Come down!" Only then did Elder Ouyang come back to his senses and look down. Huafeng? Wenxi? Why are the two of you here? As he spoke, he turned his gaze and saw Chu Luiyue standing next to him. His eyes, which were almost invisible from his smile, suddenly widened, and his face was filled with shock. Why is there a child here? The two elders, Chu Luiyue, who had been ignored. Although her current appearance and figure were not so eye-catching, it was not so easy for others to not see her. Hey, what's wrong with the two of you? Elder Ouyang raised his head and looked at the sky. The dark night was almost fading away. The horizon was dark blue, and the place where the sky met the earth was suffused with a fish-belly white. The light gradually penetrated through the layers of clouds. It's going to be dawn soon. Why are you still here with a child? Bah! Elder Huafeng couldn't help but spit. Ouyang! Open your eyes wide and take a look. We didn't bring this kid in. When you summoned Tianlei to refine the sword just now, he was already here. You're blind and you can't see him, and you're blaming us. What? He was here just now? Elder Ouyang was at a loss. Only then did he carefully size up Chu Luiyue, and his expression became more and more strange. Is this a new student? Doesn't he know the rules? The corner of Chu Luiyue's eyes twitched. She suddenly felt that ever since she entered Lingxiao College, she had been fighting with the word rules. The key was that she didn't deliberately violate the rules, but for some reason, she would encounter all kinds of situations every time. It was to the point where she couldn't explain it at all. It's all your fault. Before Chu Luiyue could explain, Elder Wenxi took the lead and sneered. Before refining, don't you know to see if there are any other students here? According to what Luo Shishir and the others said just now, they should have left at the right time. But before they could leave, Tianlei came. Thus, Chu Yu was trapped. In the end, it became like this. Elder Ouyang blinked his eyes innocently. How could I have thought that there would be people here? He was in a hurry today, but he wasn't too early. After all, this place had always been fine before. Who knew? At this moment, Chu Lue finally understood the whole story. It turned out that Elder Ouyang had been preparing to refine the sword here for a long time. Today was the last day, and it was also the most critical day to summon Tianlei and carry out the final tempering. Previously, he could only summon 8 Tianlei. Today, he finally summoned 9 Tianlei. He couldn't help but feel excited. For a moment, he didn't care so much and simply moved a little bit ahead of time. In the spring, there was a sword embryo that he had put in before. When the last process was completed today, it could be officially forged into a divine weapon. Unexpectedly, he happened to run into Chu Lue and the others who returned late. This led to the current situation. That's not right. As Elder Ouyang was speaking, he suddenly thought of something. He frowned and looked at Chu Lue, his eyes full of doubts. Even if you make it in time, the power of Tianlei will drive all of you out. How could? He paused. If he remembered correctly, the Tianlei that he summoned at the beginning stopped after meeting this kid. Boy, what's the matter with you? A better reading experience came from the Love Network. Chapter 1154. Chu Liuyue's expression was innocent. She blinked her eyes lightly, and a trace of confusion appeared in her clear eyes. This student doesn't know either. Elder Ouyang looked at her suspiciously. After this old man summoned Tianlei, it should have landed directly in this spring. Unless it felt that there was another threat, it would have changed its path halfway. Just now, this Tianlei seemed to have been entangled with you for so long. He sized up Chu Lue from head to toe and muttered in a low voice, he doesn't look old. He shouldn't be able to deal with Tianlei. Ouyang, what are you thinking? Elder Huafeng laughed out loud. This brat Chu Yu is only at the early stage of the 7th stage. How could he be a match for Tianlei? If Wensi and I didn't come in time, Elder Wensi, who was beside him, didn't say anything in agreement. Instead, he looked at Chu Lue with a deep gaze. He'd stepped into the barrier before Elder Huafeng, so he was able to see the situation much clearer than Elder Huafeng. At that time, after the two of them entered, Chu Yu was standing at the top of the mountain. However, at that time, he didn't seem to be besieged by Tianlei. Instead, it seemed like he was confronting Tianlei. Yes. It was a confrontation. Elder Wensi had seen many storms and waves. He knew that under normal circumstances, this kind of situation would only happen when a cultivator was extremely strong. However, this was definitely not something that Chu Yu could do. He still remembered that when the youth turned around, although his face was filled with surprise, his jade-like eyes were unexpectedly calm. No matter how he thought about it, it was wrong. Chu Lue lowered her eyes and pretended not to know. Elder Ouyang asked for a while, but seeing that he couldn't get anything out of him, he simply gave up. I'm probably wrong, let's not talk about this for now. What do you plan to do in this situation? Elder Ouyang's gaze swept back and forth between the two elders, and there was a meaningful look in his eyes. This 1,000-wine mountain was usually strictly limited to the time to enter. Students were absolutely not allowed to appear here at such a time. But now, not only was Chu Yu here, he had seen too much. Even if he didn't know the secret of the spring, he had already seen something he shouldn't have. If it was an outsider who had barged in on purpose, they could just kill him directly. But in the end, Chu Yu was a student of his own academy. He couldn't do that. Therefore, this matter became very troublesome. Elder Wensi was silent for a moment and looked at Chu Lue. Chu Yu, are you able to keep your mouth shut about today's matter and not reveal anything to the outside world? Could Chu Lue say no? She nodded and said seriously, today, I've been cultivating in my residence. I don't know anything else. Elder Wensi stared at him. That spring you, before he could finish his sentence. The face of the young man in front of him was still a little immature. Her eyes were clean, pure, and clear. It was as if one could see the bottom with a single glance. He heaved a sigh of relief. Forget it. Let's just pretend that nothing happened today. Whoosh. Before he could finish his words, a strange sound suddenly came from the spring eye on the top of the mountain. Chu Luiyue instinctively turned around to take a look and saw that the spring was glowing brightly. Vaguely, she could see that several Tianlei inside were swimming faster. They were intertwining crazily. It was as if they would break out of it in the next moment. Chu Luiyue's heart skipped a beat. Standing here, she could clearly feel that the pressure in that place was rising at an astonishing speed. At this moment, Dumpling suddenly flew out from her shoulder. She went straight there. Chu Luiyue's heart skipped a beat. Dumpling. The three elders were also shocked. Stop it. Elder Wen, she roared. But it was too late. Chu Luiyue and Dumpling's position was very close to the spring eye. It made a move at such a surprising time. Who could stop it? Plop. Tuanzi plunged directly into the mouth of the spring. In an instant, sparks flew everywhere. Its small red figure was instantly enveloped by countless silver lights. Crackle. Chu Luiyue could even clearly hear the sound of the Tianlei swimming crazily on Dumpling's body. She was about to move when she suddenly felt a subtle fluctuation in her body. That was Dumpling's aura increasing. Chu Luiyue was really shocked. This was the reason why Dumpling couldn't fly out. This was only the beginning. Its bloodline potential seemed to be showing signs of being stimulated. If it stayed in it for a little longer, quick! Get it out! Elder Ouyang shouted with trembling hands. My wine! Elder Huafeng screamed and was the first to pounce over. This little thing actually went in directly. He ran directly to the spring eye and grabbed Dumpling with his big hand. Tuanzi blinked its round eyes and dived into the deeper part of the cave. Elder Huafeng was really anxious and couldn't help but curse, "Come out for me." It wasn't easy for Dumpling to find this opportunity to come in. At this moment, it was enjoying it the most, so how could it come out? Elder Huafeng gritted his teeth in anger and subconsciously wanted to make a move. But when his hand was about to sink into the water, he suddenly stopped and a trace of struggle flashed across his face. It wasn't easy for them to raise it for so many years. Chu Yu. Get it out immediately. Elder Wensi spoke up. Seeing his obviously serious expression, Chu Luiyue curled her hands in her sleeves and looked at Dumpling. Dumpling. If you don't come back, never come back. She said these words very calmly, but there was a clear warning in her voice. Dumpling's body stiffened, and then it quickly swam back and forth in the spring eye before reluctantly flying up. Its entire body was soaked, and its red feathers were soaked in water, making the color even richer. On it, one could even see a few silver lights flashing quickly and disappearing under its feathers. When the elders saw this scene, their expressions became extremely interesting. That was the Tianlei that they had stored with great difficulty in the spring eye. After so many years, they had finally saved up this little bit, but in the end, it was all used up by this thing. You! Elder Wensi took a deep breath, and his vision turned black. Dumpling squatted on Chu Luiyue's shoulder and rubbed its head with its wings with an innocent expression. Elder Wensi suddenly couldn't say the rest of his words. The red-tailed phoenix was a divine beast, and its intelligence was not inferior to that of the human race. The reason why it did this was because it did it on purpose. It still dared to do this in front of them. With such a temperament and courage, it was useless to scold it 100 times. Elder Wensi turned his gaze and looked at Chu Luiyue, suppressing the anger in his heart. Chu Yu. Now, what do you think we should do? Chu Luiyue pondered for a moment, then suddenly picked up Dumpling and handed it over. Elder, whoever causes trouble will be responsible, okay? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1155. Dumpling, who was abandoned. Mistress, did you say something wrong? You're not serious, are you? Dumpling held on to her last glimmer of hope and turned her head with difficulty to look at Chu Luiyue. Chu Luiyue returned a look of helplessness and pain. "I'm really sorry." Because her intuition told her that this matter was very serious. Very serious. Looking at the elder's current expressions, if she didn't try her best to pull herself out, she would probably be ruthlessly beaten up. Chu Luiyue admitted that she didn't have the strength to contend with these 3 elders. Then, it was better to save as many as possible. She picked up Dumpling's wings and handed it forward. Her expression was apologetic and extremely sincere. It's all because of the student's lack of discipline that led to such a result. However, the student's strength is low, and I really couldn't watch it just now. The red-tailed phoenix was a divine beast after all. If it insisted on doing something, a mere early-stage 7th-stage cultivator naturally wouldn't be able to stop it. The 3 elders looked at each other. They saw clearly just now that it was indeed this red-tailed phoenix that suddenly ran out on its own. Chu Yu also stopped it, but it was too late. "After all, this is your contracted divine beast," Elder Wensi said. "You can't absolve yourself from the blame." Chu Liuyue's heart skipped a beat. "From today onwards, you will be grounded in Mount Pengmin for a month." Mount Pengmin? Chu Luiyue pursed her lips. She had been to many places in the academy these few days and had a certain understanding of the academy, but why hadn't she heard of this place before? A month? That's a bit too long. Elder Huafeng said hesitantly. This kid is Wan Zhang's new disciple after all. That old thing hadn't accepted a disciple for several years. Now that he finally found one that caught his eye, he would definitely pamper him like a treasure. If he were to be locked up for a month straight from the get-go, his reputation would be ruined. Elder Wensi paused, then 10 days. It can't be less. This time, the other 2 elders did not object. Elder Wensi glanced at Dumpling. Dumpling immediately held Chu Liuyue's hand tightly. "Are you scared now?" Elder Wensi sneered. "If I find out you're doing this again, elders, don't worry. This student will definitely discipline it strictly in the future." Chu Luiyue said earnestly. Elder Wensi snorted. "And you? You've only been here for 1 day and you've already caused such trouble. How could he have misjudged her before? How could he have thought that she was an honest and obedient person?" Chu Luiyue lowered his head and obediently listened to the elder's lecture. At this time, the sky was slightly bright. She stood with her hands by her side and her head slightly lowered. Only her thick eyelashes and smooth white chin could be seen. She looked like a well-behaved and obedient child again. Elder Wensi suddenly couldn't say the rest of his words. In fact, by this time, he could already tell that this child was not a peaceful child at all. But, such an innocent and pitiful look of admitting her mistake really made people unable to bear to scold her. "Forget it." Elder Wensi shook his head. "Don't do it again." Chu Luiyue heard the softness in his tone and couldn't help but look up and smile in surprise. "Thank you, Elder." The young man's face was delicate and clean. This smile was actually bright and dazzling. An extremely familiar feeling suddenly surged in his heart. Elder Wensi's heart skipped a beat. This expression, this smile, it was really similar to. Chu Luiyue noticed the subtle change in his expression and immediately retracted the smile on her face without batting an eyelid. "Ouyang, take him to Mount Pengmin." Elder Ouyang's eyes widened. "Why me?" Elder Wensi rolled his eyes at him and was too lazy to talk nonsense. He turned around and left directly. Elder Huafeng patted Elder Ouyang's shoulder sympathetically. "It's also your fault that you didn't take good care of this spring eye. But don't worry, we'll definitely put in a good word for you later." Ah. After saying that, he quickly left without waiting for Elder Ouyang's reaction. Soon, only Chu Luiyue and Elder Ouyang were left on the top of the mountain. The mountain wind blew with a hint of coolness. Elder Ouyang came back to his senses and looked at Chu Luiyue with incomparable resentment. "You brat. Forget it, follow me." At this time, the sky had just brightened. But in the academy, many students had already gotten up and started cultivating. On each mountain, there were students busy with their own things. The assessment at the beginning of the month had just ended, and everyone's spirits were still very high. Those who won wanted to stabilize, and those who lost wanted to fight back. As for the new students, needless to say, they were full of excitement and curiosity. All they thought about was to cultivate well and strive to catch up with their senior brothers and sisters as soon as possible and establish a foothold in the academy. However, at this moment, a strange scene suddenly appeared in the academy. An elder of the academy was leading a young man through the air. They passed through half of the academy and arrived at a mountain peak in the martial artist area. The location of that mountain was relatively remote. Even the students in the martial artist area rarely went there. Most importantly, there was an extremely powerful spirit formation outside the mountain peak. Others could not rashly enter it. At this time, the sudden arrival of these two people naturally attracted the attention of many people. Who is that elder? Why haven't I seen him before? You just came here not long ago, so of course you don't know. That's one of the few weapon refiners in the academy, Elder Ouyang. As soon as these words were said, it immediately caused an uproar. Weapon refiner? Didn't they say that those few rarely come out? Why did they suddenly? Wait. Why does the young man beside him look a little familiar? Ah. I think his name is Chuyu. Yesterday at the Celestial Physician assessment, he seemed to have performed very well. Why did a Celestial Physician student come here with a weapon refiner elder? At this time, Luo Shishir and Zhuosheng, who had not rested well for the entire night, finally returned after receiving Elder Wenxi's permission. Hearing the discussions of the people around them, the two of them were stunned. They looked at each other and immediately looked forward. Sure enough, in front of another mountain not far away, there were two people standing in the air. Wasn't one of them Chuyu, who was trapped in Thousand Wine Mountain? Why is he here? Both of them were surprised. They had been staying at Elder Wenxi's residence. After a long wait, Elder Wenxi and Zhuosheng finally returned. They thought that Chuyu would come back with them, but who knew that just as they asked, Elder Wenxi and Zhuosheng's expressions became very strange. They only said that Chuyu was safe and told them to go back without worry. They thought that Chuyu had already returned to his place. Who knew, he actually came here. Suddenly, a voice came from the crowd. Pengmin Mountain has always only punished and imprisoned students who have made big mistakes. What did that newcomer Chuyu do? He went in on his second day at the academy. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1156. Many people, including Luo Shishir, couldn't help but turn around and look at the source of the voice. The one who spoke was a young man who looked to be around 26 or 27 years old. He was tall and had wheat-colored skin. His facial features were strong and his eyes were sharp. Senior brother Mo ran, you said that Chuyu made a mistake so he's locked up in Pengmin Mountain? Someone asked curiously. When Luo Shishir and Luo Shishir heard this name, they couldn't help but be shocked. Mo ran, 9th on the warrior ranking. In the academy, he could definitely be considered to be one of the top students. Therefore, the credibility of his words was higher. That's right. Mo Ran didn't have much expression on his face. Only when he looked at the slender and tall figure in the distance did his expression change. This newcomer really has some ability. His voice was very soft, so almost no one heard it. But after getting his confirmation, everyone was still in an uproar. Made a big mistake? That Chuyu just came, what mistake could he have made? That's right. Moreover, he was personally brought here by Elder Ouyang. Could it be that he got into trouble at the weapon refiner's place? It shouldn't be, right? Didn't everyone never go there? Since he's already entered the academy, he must have heard from the elder that he can't casually go to the weapon refiner's place, right? Also, there's a barrier there, can he go in as he pleases? Everyone was filled with curiosity and their eyes couldn't hide the gossip and excitement. Life in the academy was actually very peaceful on the whole. The sudden arrival of such a fierce person naturally attracted their attention. Senior brother Mo ran? A gentle female voice sounded. Mo ran turned his head to look. A man and a woman, two students who looked to be around 20 years old, were rushing to his side. Both of their eyes were filled with worry. Senior brother Mo ran, is it really serious to be locked up in Pengmin Mountain? How long will he be locked up for? Mo ran sized up the two of them without batting an eyelid. How long he'll be locked up depends on the size of his mistake. As for whether it's serious or not, he's the only one who entered the academy in half a year. Luo Shishir and Luo Shishir looked at each other and frowned. How could this be? Previously, when Shiyu was trapped in 10,000 Wine Mountain, they had asked Elder Wen Shi and Elder Wen Shi for help. Logically speaking, it was a blessing that Shiyu could return safely. But, why was he locked up for no reason? Could it be? Was it because he stayed in the 1,000 Wine Mountain during the ban? Other than that, they really couldn't think of any other reason. But he couldn't say such words out loud. After all, the two elders had already reminded him not to reveal anything about what happened yesterday. Suddenly, Zhuo Sheng had a thought. Oh right, does Elder Wanjing know about this? In front of Pengmin Mountain, Chu Luyue and Elder Ouyang stood in the air. As soon as they stood still, an aged voice came from the mountain. Ouyang? Why are you here? This low and deep voice almost caused one's mind to tremble as it fell into one's ears. Even the origin power within one's body began to circulate faster. Chu Luyue was secretly shocked. The strength of the person who spoke was probably unimaginably strong. What else can I do here? Of course, I'm here to send someone to you. Elder Ouyang snorted softly. Lock this kid up for 10 days. The other party was silent for a moment. Chu Luyue only felt that there was a line of sight slowly sweeping across her body from the unseen. In an instant, it was as if everything about her had been exposed and seen clearly by everyone. Through and through. She subconsciously restrained her aura. After a while, the invisible pressure finally dissipated. A freshman? Elder Ouyang had a headache. He just came yesterday. Oh. For some reason, Chu Luyue suddenly felt that the other party seemed to be a little interested in her. This is interesting. The last person who came in so early was, the voice stopped abruptly. It seemed that he wanted to continue, but there seemed to be some taboo, so he could only abruptly end it like this. Chu Luyue subconsciously glanced at Elder Ouyang, only to see that his expression had also frozen for a moment. But this change only lasted for a moment, and Elder Ouyang's expression returned to normal in an instant. If not for Chu Luyue's sharp eyes, she might not have noticed it. A faint doubt arose in her heart. If she guessed correctly, the person that the other party wanted to mention should be the mysterious person whose name was erased from the green cloud roll. Everyone in the academy, from the dean to the elders, and even the students seemed to be secretive about this person. Even until now, Chu Luyue still did not know what that person's name was. According to what they said, that person was no longer in the academy, but there seemed to be traces of that person everywhere in the academy. It was difficult to avoid and ignore. Chu Luyue sighed softly in her heart. She really did not know what kind of person that person was. All right, I got it. After 10 days, he will be released. As the voice fell, the void in front of the two vibrated, and a stream of light overflowed. Immediately, the boundary formed by the Xian formation quickly opened. Elder Ouyang raised his chin at Chu Luyue. Chu Luyue bowed seriously, then took a deep breath and stepped in. What? You guys locked him up in Pengmin Mountain? Elder Wanzheng, who had just finished taking care of the herbs, looked at Elder Huafeng in shock. Are you guys crazy? Elder Huafeng almost threw the wine pot in his hand. You're the one who's crazy. I came over to tell you this out of kindness. Why are you scolding me? Aren't you anxious that your disciple is locked up there? Elder Wanjing rushed over angrily. Speak. What's going on? If you don't make it clear and bully my disciple, that kid stayed in 1,000 Wine Mountain yesterday. This sentence caused Elder Wan Zheng's face to be stunned for a moment. What do you mean? Humph, it's what you're thinking. Elder Huafeng straightened his collar and sneered. Not only that, he just happened to meet Ouyang Lianjin yesterday. Almost all of them were seen. If it weren't for you, this kid would have stayed in Pengmin Mountain for a month. Elder Wan Zheng's breathing stagnated. He never thought that Chu Yu would cause such a big trouble in just one day. But, Elder Wan Zheng wanted to say something but stopped. He wanted to defend Chu Yu, but he didn't know where to start. It was because this matter was too serious. Lingxiao College had stood in the Divine Ruins world for tens of thousands of years and had recruited countless students. Even now, the number of students in the college was about 3,000. With so many people, how could no one make a mistake? The college had all kinds of punishment methods. Being locked up in Pengmin Mountain was definitely one of the top 3 punishments. If it wasn't a last resort, the elders wouldn't be willing to do this. But now, he had finally accepted a student, and he was sent straight to Pengmin Mountain. Elder Huafeng chuckled and comforted him. Aya, look on the bright side. Didn't you always want to accept that troublemaker as your disciple? In the end, you didn't succeed. Look at now, Chu Yu is locked up in Pengmin Mountain on the 2nd day of school. At least he's the same as that person. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1157. Elder Wanjing glanced at him with a gloomy look. Elder Huafeng tactfully shut his mouth. Cough. It's just a joke. Don't mind it, don't mind it. Elder Wanjing suddenly smiled. It's fine. This joke is quite funny. When she comes back later, I'll tell her. She'll definitely like it. Hey. Elder Huafeng's expression changed. Look at you. I'm not. Fine, I was wrong. I admit my mistake. Looking at Elder Wanzheng's half-smile, Elder Huafeng regretted it so much that he wanted to slap himself. Who told you to be so talkative? Of all things, you had to mention that scourge. Now, you've dug a hole for yourself. Elder Wanzheng finally let it go. However, when he thought of Chu Yu being locked up, he could not help but frown slightly. This child's talent was amazing, and he was very clever. As long as he was taught well, he would definitely be outstanding in the future. Originally, he wanted to let him get on the Qingyun role as soon as possible, but this would probably be delayed. To think that he had even planned what to teach in advance. Elder Wanjing shook his head helplessly. Then, let's wait for him to come out. The news of Chu Luiyue being locked up in Pengmin Mountain quickly spread in the academy. Everyone had different reactions and discussed it. But the current Chu Luiyue was completely clueless about this. After stepping into the barrier, she saw a 7-story tower halfway up Pengmin Mountain. Her intuition told her that that was where the voice came from, and where she would be locked up. Therefore, she walked all the way forward. When she reached the tower, Chu Luiyue stood in front of the door. The surrounding forest was lush and green. There was no one around the tower, and grayish-white mountain rocks were piled up. It seemed that no one had been here for a long time. Or rather, very few people had come. Looking at the black iron door in front of her, Chu Luiyue focused and calmed down before walking forward. As soon as she reached the door opened automatically before she could reach out. Creak. In an instant, Chu Luiyue even had the illusion that she had opened a dusty object that had been sealed for many years. Come in. An old voice entered her ears. Chu Luiyue composed herself and walked in. As soon as he entered, all he could see was darkness. Chu Luiyue looked around but could only see blurry black shadows. She frowned. Suddenly, the door behind her slowly closed. Bang! Hearing the sound, she subconsciously turned around to take a look. At this moment, the surroundings suddenly lit up. Her heart skipped a beat. She took a quick glance and saw that the lock on the door seemed to have rusted. There are a total of 7 floors here. Which floor do you want to go to? The voice continued to echo in his ears. She turned around and looked forward again. Inside the spacious and empty hall, 7 large doors floated silently. The door glowed faintly, reflecting a sacred and majestic image on the floor paved with black jade. Chu Luiyue felt as if his heart was being squeezed tightly by something. Even his breathing became difficult. That was an involuntary reaction when facing a powerful force. Although the 7 doors looked ordinary, Chu Luiyue knew very well that the power they contained was not something she could imagine. She was even calmer at times like these. Her gaze swept across the 7 doors one by one. Actually, the 7 doors were exactly the same. From the outside, there was no difference at all. Chu Luiyue wanted to try using her force to test it, but in the end, she did not do so. In a place like this, it was better to be honest. The surroundings were silent. Chu Luiyue knew that the other party was waiting for her to make a choice. I choose, she hesitated for a moment, then pointed to the 2nd door on the right. Here. After a while, the voice sounded again. Why? This time, the voice seemed to have a trace of surprise and astonishment. Chu Luiyue blinked. Why? What other reason could there be? Wasn't it just a random choice? But of course, she could not say that out loud. So, she paused for a moment and deliberated. This. I can't choose. Chu Luiyue had only asked casually, but she did not expect the other party to fall silent after she spoke. This made her heart sink slowly. Could it be that she had really chosen something that she could not choose? I'll give you a second chance. That voice sounded again. Choose carefully. Chu Luiyue nodded respectfully and cautiously. Your student understands. Then, the 7 doors suddenly shone brightly. The dazzling light forced Chu Luiyue to raise her hand to cover her eyes. But soon, the light quickly dissipated. Chu Luiyue put down her hand and looked forward. Needless to say, the order of the 7 doors had changed. Choose. The person said. Chu Luiyue nodded slightly. Her eyes sized up the doors for a moment, then she raised her hand and pointed to the door in the middle. Your student chooses this. Silence. Chu Luiyue suddenly felt a trace of uneasiness in her heart. Did she choose something that was not suitable again? It couldn't be such a coincidence, right? Heh. At this moment, the person suddenly laughed. It seems that it's destined. There was no anger in his tone, as if he had restrained all his emotions. But Chu Luiyue's heart sank. It seemed that she had chosen the same door as the previous one. Go in. After 10 days, the door will open automatically and let you out. Chu Luiyue put away her thoughts, nodded slightly, and walked forward. She walked to the door in the middle, raised her hand, and pushed the door open. Her figure quickly disappeared behind the door. After a while, that voice sounded again in a low voice. She actually chose the same door. Really, let's hope that this child can come out of there safely. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1158. Because of the previous 2 choices, Chu Luiyue was actually a little nervous when she pushed open the door and entered. But when she entered, she realized that things were not as she had expected. Because what appeared in front of her was a square room. This room was not big, but it could definitely accommodate dozens of people. The 4 walls were covered with intertwining black and white patterns. Chu Luiyue glanced at it. Apart from barely recognizing the upper left corner of one of the walls, which seemed to be engraved with the school's totem, she could not understand the other patterns. Overall, the lines were messy and without any order, as if someone had dipped a brush in ink and casually sprinkled it on the white rice paper. Other than that, there was nothing else. Chu Luiyue frowned and walked to the middle. The door behind her closed automatically. Chu Luiyue did not pay attention to it. Anyway, no matter what, she had to stay here for 10 days. After looking around carefully and confirming that there was indeed nothing out of the ordinary here, Chu Luiyue simply sat on the ground, closed her eyes and began to cultivate. Yes, although there were no windows here, it was not stuffy. Just like outside, there was an abundance of heaven and earth force. Since she could not do anything here, she might as well cultivate. Just as she was about to close her eyes and begin, with a plop, a small creature suddenly fell to the ground. It was Dumpling. Looking at the soaked dumpling on the ground in front of her, Chu Luiyue was stunned for a moment. She had already called Dumpling back earlier and did not call it just now. Why did it come out on its own? Dumpling? She called out. Plop plop, Dumpling flapped its wings frantically, as if trying to shake off the water on its body and dry itself. Chu Luiyue stared at it for a while and could not help but remind it. Dumpling, you can use fire to dry yourself. Dumpling paused and looked up at her with eager eyes. Chu Luiyue's pupils suddenly shrank. Because in Tuan Zi's eyes, there was a flash of silver in a flash. Is that Tianlei? She knew that Dumpling had taken advantage of the previous opportunity to devour a lot of Tianlei to stimulate her bloodline power, but she didn't expect this to happen. Dumpling, are you all right? Dumpling shook its head and began to flap its wings frantically. So much Tianlei is swimming around its body, and it hasn't been completely absorbed yet. If he hastily summons the flames now, I'm afraid even he won't be able to control them once they start burning. The legendary three-eyed eagle said coldly. Chu Luiyue finally understood. He looked at Dumpling, who was working very hard on the ground, and the corner of his mouth twitched slightly. Then, how long will it take to completely digest the power this time? That depends on it. It could be as short as 1 day, or as long as 3 days. Chu Luiyue breathed a sigh of relief. Because we chose to attack when Tianlei's power was at its most abundant, it devoured a lot this time. However, if we want to completely stimulate its bloodline power, we still have to do as we said before. It would have been fine if he didn't mention this, but now that he mentioned it, Chu Luiyue had a headache. He had only stayed on Thousand Wine Mountain once, and he was locked up here for 10 days. If he really stayed there for a month, Chu Luiyue felt that he might be expelled. Just don't be discovered. As if guessing Chu Luiyue's thoughts, the legendary three-eyed eagle said calmly. Chu Luiyue. Do I look like someone with such ability? Thousand Wine Mountain was heavily guarded. How was she going to go there for a month without being discovered? Chu Luiyue looked at Dumpling and suddenly felt that it was fine the way it was now. Wasn't that the red-tailed phoenix that had won against Lu Yintong? Of course you are. The legendary three-eyed eagle gave an affirmative answer. Chu Luiyue was speechless for a moment. For a moment, she didn't know whether to be happy that the legendary three-eyed eagle thought so highly of her, or worried about how she could complete this ridiculous task. She shook her head. She still chose to suppress this thought. She closed her eyes, held her breath, and began to absorb the heaven and earth force around her. Streams of origin power condensed and poured into her body. These forces flowed through her limbs and bones, and finally gathered in her dantian. Time passed bit by bit, and Chu Luiyue's aura continued to strengthen. However, what she didn't know was that the walls around her were also quietly changing. The seemingly irregular lines seemed to be attracted by some kind of power and slowly moved. Without a sound, they transformed into various strange diagrams. As these lines fluctuated, the space around Chu Luiyue seemed to be stirred. Layers of pressure quickly superimposed in these fluctuations. At this moment, Chu Luiyue closed her eyes and focused all her attention on cultivation. If she opened her eyes, she would see that around her, there were black cracks mixed in the distorted space. And that terrifying and heavy fluctuation was like a tide, slowly and firmly surging toward her. However, just as those ripples were about to reach Chu Luiyue, they suddenly stopped. Then, a wave of power took a step forward. Almost at the same time, Chu Luiyue's body was suffused with a bright golden light. Pure gold armor. Sensing this light and aura, the aura that had been accumulating on that power dissipated in an instant. Then, that power gently turned, and the surrounding power seemed to be affected as well. One by one, they removed that terrifying pressure and lingered around Chu Luiyue. It seemed to be intimate and nostalgic. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1159. Amidst these silent waves, Chu Luiyue's speed of devouring the force began to increase. She seemed to have entered an extremely strange state. Even though her eyes were closed, she could still subtly sense everything around her. She could vaguely feel that there was something flowing slowly around her, passing through her body. During this process, a portion of the force quietly entered her body. At this moment, she suddenly realized that the force of heaven and earth here was extremely pure. There was almost no need to refine it, and it could be used by her. Her body was like a sponge, crazily absorbing the force around her. Moreover, this speed was also continuously increasing. Chu Luiyue was originally a little worried that her body could not withstand such a terrifying force infusion since she was only at the beginning of rank 7. But soon, she realized that she was worrying too much. Because from start to finish, her body did not feel uncomfortable at all. The rich force flowing in her yuan meridian did not cause her any pain or discomfort. Instead, it nourished her yuan meridian and made it even more supple and smooth. Chu Luiyue could even clearly feel the aura around her body increasing. Could it be that the force here is special? Such a thought flashed through Chu Luiyue's mind. But it did not seem to be that simple. Chu Luiyue quickly suppressed this thought and focused on cultivating. Dumpling, who was beside her, had unknowingly stopped moving and was lying on the ground tiredly. Only the flickering silver tian lei on its body showed that it was not as harmless as it looked. Qingming Square. Elder Bo Yen was standing with his hands behind his back, his gaze sweeping across the people in front of him. The people standing here were the people who had discussed that matter in the hall. But compared to that time, there were obviously a few people missing. For example, Wei Shiping was not here. But there were still a dozen elders standing beside him, so overall, there were quite a number of people. And the one closest to Elder Bo Yen was Rong Xiu. This old man will not say any unnecessary words. For this trip, I will leave it to all of you. Elder Bo Yen cupped his hands. Everyone agreed in unison. If you encounter any danger this time, Rong Xiu. Before Elder Bo Yen could finish, he saw Rong Xiu's expression change slightly as he looked in a certain direction. His deep phoenix eyes narrowed, and his thin scarlet lips curved into an extremely faint and helpless smile. This is really, Rong Xiu, what's wrong? Elder Bo Yen asked curiously. Rong Xiu retracted his gaze and shook his head with a faint smile. Nothing. Elder Bo Yen looked in the direction he was looking at. That was the martial artist's area. Everything was normal. Elder Bo Yen frowned. Although nothing could be seen from Rong Xiu's face, he still felt that there should be something. It was the same the previous time. It was as if there was something in the academy that was affecting Rong Xiu's thoughts. He had always been a cold and indifferent person, so there weren't many things that could interest him. But since he didn't want to say, others naturally wouldn't ask. At this moment, Elder Wensi arrived late. Elder Bo Yen smiled and asked, Wensi, if you didn't come, you wouldn't have made it. Elder Wensi coughed. I had something to do at the last minute, so I was delayed. Elder Bo Yen looked at him and his expression changed slightly. What's wrong? Elder Wensi wasn't someone who liked to be late, and it seemed that there really was something. Elder Wensi hesitated for a moment, but still decided to tell the truth. After all, they would know about this sooner or later. Actually, it's not a big deal, but a student made a small mistake and was locked up in Pengmin Mountain. As soon as he said this, everyone looked over. Pengmin Mountain was a place that wouldn't let people in easily. This student. Could it be that he made a small mistake? Oh. Who? Elder Bo Yen frowned slightly. It had been a long time since the academy had issued such a punishment, so that student must have done something that crossed the academy's bottom line. Elder Wensi sighed. He didn't come down in time yesterday and stayed in Thousand Wine Mountain for a long time. The expressions of the elders changed slightly. Which student is so daring? Elder Bo Yan's brows furrowed even tighter. Regarding Thousand Wine Mountain, the Academy had repeatedly ordered that no one was allowed to stay in Thousand Wine Mountain during the forbidden period. How could there be a student who did this? Cough, it's Chu Yu. Elder Wensi lowered his voice a little and then quickly added. But that child didn't do it on purpose. He just happened to return late for a while and was trapped in Thousand Wine Mountain. After receiving the news, Hua Feng and I immediately went to bring him out. Elder Wensi was slightly shocked when he said this. For some reason, he actually unconsciously explained for Chu Yu, as if he didn't want him to be punished too heavily. I see. Since you've already punished him, then let's forget about this matter for now. Fortunately, Elder Bo Yan didn't pursue this matter further, which made Elder Wensi secretly heave a sigh of relief. After coming back to his senses, he was stunned for a moment. It was probably because he was the one who recruited that kid, so he couldn't bear to do it. Anyway, when he thought of the youth being reprimanded and lowering his head to admit his mistake, he inexplicably couldn't bear to be ruthless. Elder Wensi took a deep breath and suppressed these chaotic thoughts. Rong Xiu, who was at the side, had a faint expression on his face. His eyelids drooped slightly as a faint light flashed across his eyes. Pengmin Mountain. Staying there, at least for a period of time, was safe. But Rong Xiu's eyes moved slightly, concealing the emotions in his eyes. This small episode didn't attract too much attention. A student being locked in Pengmin Mountain for a few days, in their opinion, was actually not a big deal. Let's go. An elder shouted and took the lead to move. He flew towards the gate of the academy. The others followed closely behind. Rong Xiu glanced at Pengmin Mountain without batting an eyelid, and then left as well. The group of figures quickly disappeared. Inside the 7-story tower of Pengmin Mountain. In the main hall, the 7 doors floated quietly. Time passed little by little. Finally, the old voice sounded again. However, this time, there was a hint of doubt in his voice. Huh. Logically speaking, that kid should have already escaped. Why is there still no movement until now? In the empty and quiet main hall, no one answered. Another period of time passed. The 7 doors was still as usual. These days, the children who can cause trouble are all so powerful, the man couldn't help but murmur in a low voice. Not coming out after such a long time, he really has some ability. In a strange space, Chu Luiyue sat cross-legged with her eyes closed. The vast and tyrannical power around her constantly poured into her body. The lines on the 4 walls flowed lightly with her breathing. It was as if her whole body had merged with this place. At this moment, there was a knock on the door. An old and low voice came into her ears. Kid, time's up. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1160. Chu Luiyue suddenly opened her eyes. A strange and bright light flashed quickly from the bottom of her eyes. The sharpness of that moment made people not dare to look directly at it. But this light quickly dissipated, and she returned to her lazy and indifferent appearance. She stretched and moved her muscles and bones. Her body, which had been sitting for a long time, made a crisp sound. Time was up, Chu Luiyue thought faintly. 10 days had passed just like that. But why didn't she feel anything at all? During the whole process, the only thing she did was cultivate. It seemed that in the blink of an eye, it was already time to go out. Chu Luiyue stood up and looked around. Everything was the same as when she first came. What she didn't know was that the moment she opened her eyes, the lines on the 4 walls had already returned to their original appearance. She naturally couldn't see anything. She picked up Dumpling beside her. Probably because it had completely digested the power, Dumpling's body no longer had the flickering silver tianlei. Moreover, the color of its wings seemed to have become more intense than before. Perhaps, this was a sign that the power of the bloodline had been activated? Chu Luiyue thought as she walked over to open the door. However, Just as her hand was about to touch the door, she suddenly paused, looked back, and narrowed her eyes slightly. She actually wanted to continue staying here for a while. What should she do? For some reason, she felt very comfortable cultivating here. The surrounding energy naturally entered her body, nourishing her flesh, blood, tendons, and bones, strengthening her aura, and during this process, she didn't feel any discomfort. Everything seemed to flow naturally. It was as if these powers were supposed to be hers. This feeling was very subtle, and it was something she had never experienced before. "Senior," she suddenly opened her mouth, but stopped midway. That voice came from outside the door. "What's wrong?" Chu Liuyue's thoughts turned, and she smiled lightly, changing the topic of the remaining half of her sentence. "Thank you for taking care of me during this period." That person snorted softly. After entering this door, he couldn't interfere, especially when this kid chose this one. From the beginning to the end, he didn't even lift a finger. How could he take care of her? "Just come out." Chu Luyue took a deep breath, took one last look, and turned to leave. A white light flashed in front of her eyes, and Chu Luyue subconsciously narrowed her eyes. After her eyes adjusted to the light, she saw the surroundings clearly. The main hall in front of her eyes was empty, exactly the same as when she came. She glanced back. The 7 doors, there were still no changes. It was as if the 10 days he had spent in there were just like a dream. "Go." After coming out of the door, Chu Luyue couldn't tell where the voice came from. It was as if the entire main hall, the voice of the voice, fell clearly in the end. She didn't. Chu Luyue thought for a while and still bowed in the direction of 7 fan door. "Students of you." With that, she turned around and lifted her foot to leave. However, as soon as she took a step, that voice sounded again, and it seemed to carry some confusion and doubt. Chu Luyue immediately stopped, stood where she was, and respectfully turned back, allowing that person's knife-like sharp gaze to sweep over her. "Senior, is there anything else?" That person's voice sounded a little strange. "Your aura has strengthened?" Chu Luyue was stunned. Was there a need to ask? She had been concentrating on cultivating in there for 10 days. Wasn't it normal for her strength to increase? But since that person asked, there was obviously something wrong. She pondered for a moment and said, "Student has been concentrating on cultivating these few days." That person didn't say anything for a while. Chu Liuyue's heart was pounding. That answer didn't seem right. "Forget it, you can go now." After a while, that voice sounded again. But Chu Luyue keenly felt that the other party's attitude towards her seemed to be a little different. She couldn't tell the specifics, but she just had this feeling. She pursed her lips and bowed to leave. The door opened automatically. After she stepped out, the door closed automatically behind her. Bang! Inside the tower, the hall was silent. A low murmur sounded. It was filled with confusion. This kid. Could it be that she likes him? Outside the door, Chu Luyue looked back and sighed softly. Although the senior in charge of guarding was a little strange, but, if only she could come a few more times. If Elder Wensi and the others knew that she came here, not only did she not learn any lessons, but also tasted the sweetness and wanted to come again, what kind of expression would they have? She felt an itch in her neck. Chu Luyue tapped Dumpling's head. "Okay, I know you still want to go. But I have to think of a way first. If you don't listen to me like last time." She glanced at Dumpling coldly. Dumpling immediately nodded like she was pounding garlic. "I won't make trouble. I'll listen to my master." Chu Luyue nodded in satisfaction and flew away. "I said, I don't know when Chuyu will come back." Zhong Sun suppressed the anger in his heart and said word by word. "This is our residence, please leave first. When he comes back, I will tell him that you have been here. No need to be so troublesome, we can just wait for him here." The few young men opposite him laughed arrogantly. "Senior brother Zhong Sun, why are you so nervous?" "We are just here to learn from Chuyu." I heard that he is very talented in celestial physician. We want to come and see. Are you going to stop us? The young man standing at the front said lazily. Zhong Sun frowned. A few days ago, these people suddenly came over, saying that they wanted to learn from Chu Yu. Since he was not here, they simply came every day, starting in the morning and only leaving at night. And Chu Yu's residence had long been turned into a mess by them. These people were not old, and according to seniority, Zhong Sun was their senior brother. But their attitude towards Zhong Sun was not very respectful. It was because their background was not to be underestimated. These people were all Lu Yintong's junior brothers. They suddenly came here, and it was obvious who ordered them to do so. That night, Zhong Sun did not go to Thousand Wine Mountain, so he did not know what happened. But from the words of the people later, he knew that Lu Yintong insisted on having a divine beast contract competition with Chu Yu, and in the end, she lost completely. This time, Chu Yu had completely offended Lu Yintong and her small group. That was why a few people took the initiative to provoke him. Senior brother Zhong Sun, this has nothing to do with you. You should stay out of it. The young man in front smiled casually. Since he was accepted as a disciple by Elder Wanzheng, he must have some ability, don't you think? If he doesn't even dare to accept our challenge, wouldn't he be too cowardly? Zhong Sun was about to argue when a clear voice with a smile suddenly sounded. Okay, I'll accept. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1161. Hearing this, they turned around to look. A young man in a green robe had unknowingly appeared behind them. His figure was a little thin, but he was very tall and straight. His face was delicate and his eyes were clean. He looked over with a faint smile on his lips. He seemed to be calm and collected, with a hint of solitude. The young men were stunned for a moment. Among them, some were at Thousand Wine Mountain that day, and some were not. But they were not very familiar with Chu Yu. At this moment, when they suddenly saw him, they realized that this young man actually had such a bearing. Chu Yu, you're back. Zhong Sun was the first to react and immediately greeted him. Walking up to him, he quickly sized up Chu Luyue with a worried expression. Are you okay? Being locked up in Pingmin Mountain was one of the most severe punishments in the academy. He had just arrived at the academy and encountered such a thing. He must be feeling terrible. Looking at Zhong Sun's worried eyes, Chu Luyue didn't know whether to laugh or cry, and a trace of warmth appeared in his heart. Senior brother Zhong Sun, don't worry, I'm fine. Or should I say, especially fine. Zhong Sun thought that she said that on purpose to make him feel at ease. But after taking a closer look, he realized that the young man in front of him had a relaxed expression and a smile in his eyes. It seemed that he was really fine. He heaved a sigh of relief. That's good, you're Chu Yu. A voice of unknown meaning was heard. Chu Luyue looked up. There were a total of 3 people opposite him. They didn't look old, only about 20 years old. The one who spoke was the one standing at the front. At this moment, he was crossing his arms and looking at Chu Luyue presumptuously. The expression in his eyes was indescribable. You were locked up in Pingmin Mountain as soon as you entered the academy. Junior brother Chu Yu's ability is really beyond our reach. Haha. These words were said in a strange tone with a thick sense of sarcasm. Zhong Sun's expression changed slightly. Just as he was about to speak, he was stopped by Chu Luyue beside him. She took a step forward and nodded with a smile, yes. I think so too. I am indeed much more outstanding than you guys. The laughter on the other side stopped abruptly. But you don't have to be discouraged. After all, sometimes, you just have to give in. Chu Luyue did not seem to notice the wonderful changes in the expressions of the people opposite him. He smiled and spoke in a light tone. However, the words that came out of his mouth were enough to infuriate him to death. Ha! Both sides were in a deadlock for a moment before the youths seemed to have finally regained their senses. What did you say? Chu Luyue blinked. It seems that senior brother's hearing is not very good. Then, I'll say it again. When she smiled, she looked clean and harmless. However, the words he spat out were like steel needles that pierced straight into their hearts. I said, you guys are too weak. Now, do you understand? How arrogant. How arrogant. Everyone present, including Zhong Sun, had the same thought when they heard Chu Liuyue's words. Could it be that this kid had gone crazy? Did he know what he was saying? Zhong Sun's expression also changed. He thought that Chu Yu might not be convinced by these people. Otherwise, he would not have directly accepted their provocation the moment he returned. After all, he was still a teenager. It was normal for him to be young and impetuous. However, he never thought that Chu Yu would actually say such words. However, at this moment, Chu Yu suddenly turned around and winked at him. He chuckled and said, Senior brother, don't worry. I know what I'm doing. Zhong Sun was stunned. He could clearly see that the youth's eyes did not have the slightest bit of anger from being provoked. The targeting and provocation of those people did not actually arouse Chu Yu's anger at all. He was completely clear-headed and rational. And under such circumstances, he still said such words, Ha! You have guts. Lu Ziyan was so angry that he laughed. In the academy, it had been a long time since such an arrogant freshman appeared. Since that's the case, let's have a real competition, how about it? Zhong Sun's heart skipped a beat. In the next moment, Lu Ziyan waved his wrist and a black jade token suddenly appeared. I, Lu Ziyan, today, issued a challenge to Chu Yu. Chu Yu, do you dare to accept? Chu Luyue narrowed his eyes. Zhong Sun hurriedly said, Chu Yu. Don't agree. You can't accept this challenge. Chu Luyue looked over. Why? Zhong Sun was secretly anxious and explained, because once you accept this challenge, it means that no one will be able to interfere with your match. Moreover, as long as either of you doesn't agree to the end of the competition, then, the competition will continue. In other words, as long as they don't kill each other, the two sides of the competition can beat each other up as much as they want. It was also because of this that very few people in the academy would carry out such a challenge. Those who would do so usually had a lot of grudges in private. Now, Chu Yu had completely offended the other party. Once he agreed, then, Senior brother Zhong Sun, do you think that I will be the one being beaten up? Chu Luyue asked softly. Zhong Sun looked at her eyes and suddenly had a thought. Could it be that? He was confident that he could win against Lu Ziyan. Facing that pair of clear and calm eyes, Zhong Sun suddenly couldn't say the words of dissuasion in his throat. Chu Yu, he didn't seem to be as young and immature as he looked on the surface. Senior brother, don't worry. After Chu Luyue finished speaking, he looked at the other side. Lu Ziyan raised his eyebrows. What, you don't dare to accept? Chu Luyue smiled. They had already bullied her to her doorstep. If she still allowed herself to be trampled on, who knew how much she would be bullied in the future? In any case, she had already offended Lu Yintong, not to mention these few lackeys that Lu Yintong had sent over. Chu Luyue admitted that she had never taken the initiative to provoke anyone, much less deliberately provoke or offend anyone. Lu Yintong had taken the initiative to find trouble with her, and now there was no end to it. Even if she went to lower herself now, the other party wouldn't give her any face. Instead, they would only step on her and trample on her at will. So, from the beginning, she didn't feign civility with these people. The only thing she needed to do was to use this opportunity to tell everyone that she wasn't to be trifled with. Chu Luyue took out his black jade token. Yes. According to the rules, when the students of the academy carried out such a challenge, they must carry it out in the Qingming Square. So, the few of them came here together. The entire square occupied an extremely large area and was very spacious. They had only come here to occupy a small piece of land. But even so, they still attracted the attention of many people. Because usually, the Qingming Square was not allowed to casually go over. So, when a few people suddenly appeared in the empty square, it naturally attracted the attention of many people. Chu Luiyue walked over and stood still. Lu Ziyan stood opposite him. The two of them faced each other from a distance. Junior brother Chu Yu, I think no one has told you before that when you don't have strength, you must be cautious and humble. Otherwise, you won't even know how you died. Lu Ziyan sneered. Chu Luiyue's lips curved slightly. Bang! A medicinal cauldron fell heavily. Senior brother Lu, it's not too late to say these words after you win against me. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1162. Outside the competition area where the two of them were, a group of people had already gathered. Isn't that Lu Ziyan and Chu Yu? What are they going to do? Challenge? Since they're on the Qingming Square, then it must be. TSK, why are these two fighting for no reason? You don't know? Didn't Chu Yu offend Lu Yintong before? That Lu Ziyan seems to be a younger brother of her family branch. Usually in the academy, this Lu Ziyan often relies on Lu Yintong to act arrogantly. Then wouldn't Chu Yu be in danger? Even if his talent is not bad, he seems to be an 8th grade celestial physician. And Lu Ziyan just broke through the 9th grade not long ago, right? What is Chu Yu thinking? He actually agreed to this challenge that he will definitely lose? This kind of competition, the elders will not easily interfere. Everyone was discussing. All kinds of voices fell into the ears. Chu Luiyue's expression did not change, as if she was unmoved. Lu Ziyan also took out his medicine cauldron. TSK, then I'll let you lose clearly. On the square, the two of them faced each other. In front of them, there was a medicine cauldron. Lu Ziyan took the lead. Now, he was a 9th grade celestial physician. Although he could only refine low-grade pills, dealing with a mere 8th grade Chu Yu, wasn't it a piece of cake? In fact, long before he came, he had already prepared the pills to refine. Therefore, even the medicinal ingredients were prepared. He took out the medicinal ingredients one by one and placed them on the side. Then, he placed one hand on the medicine cauldron. Boom! A cluster of blue flames burned. Then, he waved his sleeve lightly, and the medicinal ingredients flew up one after another and fell into the medicine cauldron. The unique bitter fragrance of the medicinal ingredients quickly spread out. However, in stark contrast to him, Chu Luiyue on the opposite side had not made a move until now. She just stood there with one hand on her arm, looking lazy. Looking at that gaze, it seemed to be looking at Lu Ziyan. Look. What's so good about Lu Ziyan refining pills? Many people looked at each other, revealing a blank expression. The competition had already begun, why was Chu Yu still not moving? Blindly watching others refine pills, could it be that he could directly win? Chu Yu, do you have a problem? Zhong Sun frowned and asked worriedly. If you lack medicinal herbs, I will go to the Medicine Wind Valley to get them for you. Lu Ziyan came prepared, but Chu Yu did not. He had just come out of Pengmin Mountain, and had directly agreed to this challenge. It was likely that he lacked a lot of things. Chu Luiyue tilted his head and smiled. Thank you, senior brother Zhong Sun. However, I don't lack medicinal herbs. You can rest assured. How could Zhong Sun really be at ease? Even if he didn't lack medicinal ingredients, he would still lose to Lu Ziyan if he refined an 8th grade medicinal pill. According to the current situation, if Chu Yu wanted to win, there was only one way. Lu Ziyan had failed to refine the pill. Only in this way could Chu Yu win. However, this was a challenge. As long as Zhong Sun was unwilling to end the competition and continue to refine, Chu Yu could do nothing about it. If Zhong Sun still managed to refine it in the end, then this match, Chu Yu would still lose. Zhong Sun looked at the young man in the arena. His heart was anxious and his lips were dry. At this time, why didn't Chu Yu seem to be anxious at all? Lu Ziyan threw in a few more medicinal herbs and refined them in an orderly manner. Taking advantage of the free time, he even raised his head to take a look. Chu Yu, who was opposite him, had not moved. Even the medicinal cauldron was empty. He couldn't help but sneer. Junior brother Chu Yu, in this challenge, are you going to keep watching me refine pills? Let me remind you that the competition has already begun. It's too late for you to admit defeat now. Chu Luiyue raised his eyebrows. Senior brother Lu, don't misunderstand. I'm really not interested in watching you refine pills. Her tone was very sincere and very serious. To be honest, this Lu Ziyan's alchemy level was not very good. Just that technique alone was enough to make her look down on it. If she really stared at it for a long time, she was worried that it would affect her performance. Lu Ziyan's face darkened. When the competition is over, let's see if you can still be so presumptuous. Chu Luiyue didn't seem to care about this warning at all. After Lu Ziyan threw in a few more medicinal herbs, she finally retracted her gaze and chuckled. So senior brother Lu wants to refine a large success pill. Lu Ziyan's hand trembled slightly, and the last medicinal herb in his hand was accidentally shaken into the cauldron. He hurriedly took out that part, but most of it had already been refined in an instant. Even if his reaction was fast, he still couldn't completely handle it. Fortunately, this shouldn't affect the pill formation. Lu Ziyan raised his head to look, his heart was shocked and angry. You watched for so long just now because you want to know what kind of pill I'm going to refine? Yes. Chu Luiyue chuckled, directly confirming his guess, but immediately frowned slightly, as if somewhat disappointed. I thought. Forget it, this will save me a lot of trouble. At first, she thought that Lu Ziyan would refine some kind of powerful pill, but who knew that after all this time, it was only an inferior 9th grade pill. Moreover, it was the kind that was more forced. This made Chu Luiyue feel a little bored, but considering that the opponent's level wasn't high, she could win more easily. Chu Luiyue's mood improved a lot. She didn't deliberately hide her emotions and thoughts, and Lu Ziyan saw it clearly on the opposite side. In an instant, the anger in his heart soared and burned. This brat. He actually looked down on me? Boom. Before he had time to speak, Chu Luiyue on the opposite side finally moved. A thick and hot red flame instantly filled the entire medicinal cauldron. Then, almost without any delay, she threw in a series of medicinal herbs. The whole process was like moving clouds and flowing water, and her technique was perfect. Mobile users, please browse and read, a better reading experience from the Love Network. Chapter 1163. The moment she made her move, the originally noisy crowd instantly quieted down. Among the onlookers, not all were celestial physician. But even if they were martial artists and Xian masters, those who could enter Lingxiao College were all top geniuses in the world. They more or less had a certain understanding of celestial physician. And they could also distinguish between good and bad alchemy skills. So, when Chu Luiyue started refining, they were all shocked on the spot. The smoothness of his movements and control of the medicinal herbs were clearly better than Lu Ziyan's. Lu Ziyan was also shocked. Wasn't Chu Yu an 8th grade celestial physician? But the strength he displayed clearly far exceeded that. Lu Ziyan closed his eyes and looked again. Maybe Chu Yu was just bluffing and didn't have any ability at all. When he saw Chu Yu easily separating the medicinal herbs and refining them, the last trace of fantasy in Lu Ziyan's heart was completely shattered. At this time, even if he was unwilling, he had to admit that Chu Yu was indeed capable. A trace of panic faintly appeared in his heart. Maybe Chu Yu could really win against him. Suddenly, a burning pain came. Lu Ziyan took a breath of cold air and looked down. Only then did he realize that he was so distracted that he forgot to control the flame in the medicinal cauldron. Just now, it was the flame that leaped out that burned his hand. He wasn't injured, but the medicinal herbs in the medicinal cauldron were already ruined. Looking at the pile of things that were already charred black, Lu Ziyan was burning with anger. He wanted to kick the medicinal cauldron away and smash it on Chu Yu's face. Bang! He fiercely placed his hand on the medicinal cauldron and cleared out all the medicinal herbs. Some ashes flew and scattered. Seeing this scene, many people secretly exchanged glances. This Lu Zian's mental endurance was not good. Chuyu was just standing there. He had just started refining, but he actually accidentally destroyed the medicinal herbs that he had just refined. TSK. If Chuyu really won, who knew what kind of expression he would have? Lu Zian took a deep breath and forced himself to calm down. Although his previous effort was wasted, he still had spare medicinal herbs in his hands. What he had to do next was to refine his medicinal pill as soon as possible. He began to refine medicine again. Chu Luiyue only needed to glance at Lu Zian's situation from the corner of his eyes to know what was going on. The corners of her lips curled up slightly as she found it a little funny. He really didn't know why Lu Yintong asked him to come. Did she overestimate Lu Zian or underestimate Chu Luiyue? He had clearly lost once on the Million Wine Mountain, yet he was still so careless. Wasn't this the same as sending herself to her doorstep to win? Chu Luiyue placed the rest of the herbs in an orderly manner. After coming out of Pengmin Mountain, she clearly felt that her strength had increased. Vaguely, he seemed to have touched the threshold of a higher level. Moreover, her spirit also seemed to have improved a lot, which made it easier for her to refine medicine. Time passed slowly. Outside the square, the number of onlookers had also increased. On one hand, there weren't many challenges in the academy, so each time, it would attract a lot of attention. On the other hand, the name, Chuyu, had been mentioned a lot in the academy recently. As soon as he came out of Pengmin Mountain, he began to challenge others, and his opponent was obviously stronger than him. Even if everyone wanted to ignore or forget this freshman, it was a little difficult. After receiving the news, Luo Shishir and the others also rushed over. Luo Yanlin even came with them. It's really Chuyu. After seeing the person standing in the square clearly, Zhuosheng couldn't help but exclaim. What is he thinking? Doesn't he know the rules of the challenge? If the place had made up his mind to mess with him, he was afraid that, Shishir, your friend is not very peaceful. Luo Yanlin stared at the field for a while and gave an evaluation. It was rare to see such a student who could cause trouble. Luo Shishir pursed her lips. It's Lu Yintong and the others who want to bully him, that's why he resisted. That day on Million Wine Mountain, it was clearly those people who provoked him and insisted on a competition. After losing, they were unwilling to accept it and sent others to deliberately cause trouble for Chuyu. From the beginning to the end, Chuyu didn't do anything wrong. If it was someone else, they might not be in the same situation as Chuyu and would have been bullied to death. The strong are respected, there's no bullying. Luo Yanlin said lightly. He obviously knows this principle himself. That was why he had agreed to carry out this challenge. Thinking of this, Luo Yanlin suddenly laughed. This kid is a little interesting. If he could really win this round, it wouldn't be others bullying him, it would be him, killing the chicken to warn the monkey. Buzz. Suddenly, there was a fluctuation in Chu Luiyue's medicine cauldron. A strong medicinal fragrance spread out from it. Chu Yu is about to form the pill. Someone in the crowd shouted. Almost at the same time, there was a similar movement on Lu Zian's side. The burning flames continued to rise. A spherical pill was faintly discernible. Lu Zian is about to succeed too. I wonder who will succeed first, so what if Chuyu succeeds first? An 8th grade pill can't be compared to a 9th grade pill. Look at him, he doesn't seem to be in a hurry at all. I wonder if he still has some tricks up his sleeve, huh? Tricks up his sleeve? Could it be that he can also refine a 9th grade pill? The crowd roared with laughter. At this moment, Chu Luiyue on the stage suddenly slapped the medicine cauldron. A cluster of flames wrapped around a fist-sized pill and suddenly flew up. At the same time, she waved her sleeve and several medicinal herbs fell into the medicine cauldron one after another. This sudden move shocked everyone on the spot. What is he trying to do? He hasn't finished refining the pill and he's already out of the cauldron? No. He's going to refine the second pill. He hasn't even formed the first pill, how can he refine the second one? Suddenly, a shocked cry came from the crowd, no. He's going to fuse the pill. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1164. Luo Shishir frowned and couldn't help but murmur. What is pill fusion? Pill fusion is a special method used by celestial physician when refining pills. I heard that it can fuse 2 or even more pills and finally condense them into a single pill. This way, all the medicinal effects can be gathered together to the greatest possible extent, thus increasing the grade of the pill. Luo Yenlin patiently explained from the side. Although he wasn't a celestial physician, he had stayed in the academy for a few years and still had some understanding of this. Increasing the grade of the pill? Luo Shishir's heart skipped a beat. Could it be that he really intends to refine a 9th grade medicinal pill? He wants to win, so it's understandable that he would do this. Luo Yenlin laughed. Previously, I thought that if he could win, he could only hope that something would happen to Lu Ziyan. I didn't expect him to have this second option. In the beginning, he didn't take this Chu Yu to heart, and even had some natural hostility because Luo Shishir was especially concerned about him. But now, he found that this Chu Yu was indeed quite interesting. He had only been in the academy for a short time, and he had already made such a big name. Putting aside the previous things for the time being, as long as he could win today, he would definitely be famous in the entire academy. Luo Shishir and the others' faces were filled with joy. So, as long as he can succeed, the chances of winning are also very high. Luo Yenlin saw the smile on her face and couldn't help but reach out his hand, lightly flicked her forehead, and snorted, "Don't be so optimistic. I only said that he wanted to fuse the pill, but I didn't say that he would definitely be able to do it." One had to know that when refining pills, the most important thing was to be completely focused. If you want to fuse the pill, you must at least be able to multitask. He was an 8th grade celestial physician. If he wanted to defeat Lu Ziyan, he would have to refine at least 2 superior 8th grade pills. Luo Shishir and the others' expressions froze. To refine 2 superior 8th grade pills at the same time, not to mention an 8th grade celestial physician, even a 9th grade would be quite difficult, right? In any case, so far, I have never heard of an 8th grade celestial physician being able to complete the pill fusion. Luo Yenlin's words made their hearts sink, and they all looked at the field worriedly. That 16-year-old boy, could he really do it? Chu Luo separated a ball of flame from his side and wrapped it around the pill he had just refined. About half an arm's length above the cauldron, he quietly refined it and carried out the final refinement. On the other side, she was still continuously adding new medicinal herbs into the medicinal cauldron. When Lu Ziyan looked up, he saw such a scene. He gritted his teeth as the hatred in his heart grew. "You overestimate yourself," he cursed under his breath. "An 8th grade celestial physician, do you know what it means to fuse pills? Forcing it was just showing off. In the end, he might not even be able to refine a single 8th grade medicinal pill." However, as time passed, nothing out of the ordinary happened on the other side. Throughout the entire process, Chu Luo did it in an orderly manner. The pill at the top was constantly being condensed, and the medicinal herbs below were also being refined one after another. Soon, Chu Luo actually began to smoothly refine the second pill. Lu Ziyan forced himself to retract his gaze and put all his attention on his own pill. However, in his heart, there was always a faint sense of anxiety and uneasiness, as if something bad was about to happen. When his mind was in chaos, the flame in the medicinal cauldron also fluctuated. His heart jumped fiercely, and he quickly stabilized it. Fortunately, the pills seemed to be fine. However, Lu Ziyan's heart still sank. When refining pills, the last step was very important, and it required even more concentration than before. If there was a slight mistake, it would cause irreparable consequences and affect the quality of the entire pill. More seriously, it could even cause the pill to be destroyed. Although this one of his pills could succeed, the quality was, gritting his teeth, Lu Ziyan still controlled the flame and carried out the final roasting and refining. Wang! An astonishing fluctuation reverberated in the medicinal cauldron. At the same time, a rich medicinal fragrance filled the air. A vermilion red pill flew out from the medicinal cauldron. Lu Ziyan was already prepared. With a wave of his wrist, he set up a barrier above. That pill fiercely hit the barrier. Then it quickly bounced back. Lu Ziyan waved his sleeve and quickly kept that pill into a jade box. Gotcha! The jade box closed. The pill was formed. Holding the jade box in his hand, Lu Ziyan let out a sigh of relief. It was daunting but not dangerous. This pill was finally formed. Now, the outcome of the competition depended on Chu Yu on the opposite side. Looking at Lu Ziyan's expression, everyone guessed that he should have successfully refined the large success pill. In other words, the current him had a 9th grade lower grade pill as a foundation. If Chu Yu failed to refine the pill, or the final pill was not 9th grade lower grade, then the winner of this competition would be Lu Ziyan. But if he succeeded in refining the pill, and the grade was higher than Lu Ziyan's, then, some people thought of this and could not help but secretly shake their heads. How could it be? A mere 8th grade celestial physician, Chu Yu, could not possibly have such ability. Chu Luiyue was focused on refining the pill, turning a deaf ear to everything around her. Once, when she was still in Shangguanyu, she was quite good at refining pills and had a lot of experience. But after her rebirth, she never did it again. Today, it was because she wanted to win against Lu Ziyan that she had this idea. Based on her current strength, refining a grade 8 medicinal pill was not a problem. But 9th grade pills were a bit difficult. Instead of taking the risk, it was better to use a more reliable method, refining the pill. This method had a slightly lower requirement for the celestial physician's strength. Only the technique and attention requirements were higher, which was just right for her now. Of course, if the people present knew that she was thinking like this, they would probably have the heart to beat her. Because, it was precisely these that were the biggest test for a celestial physician. For martial artists and cultivators, if their talent was not enough, they could still make up for it with diligence. But celestial physician could not. Every step of a celestial physician's cultivation, every breakthrough, was closely related to the level of the cultivator's talent. For example, the same prescription, different celestial physician would have different effects. Only those with good talent and spirituality could bring out the greatest effect of this prescription. And a celestial physician's technique, sensitivity, perception, and so on were all included in the word talent. Some people, even if they practiced hundreds of times, might not be as good as others practicing once. And Chu Luiyue was such a person. Why is there a group of people gathered over there? On the Dongwang Bell Tower, a few elders were sitting together. Hearing the movement, one of them looked down. It seems that there are students in a challenge. Wait, Wanzheng, come and take a look. That seems to be your new disciple. Elder Wanzheng heard the sound and walked over. Suddenly, his expression froze, and his brows slowly furrowed. This technique, why does it look a little familiar? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1165. He looked carefully at the young man who was refining pills. His movements were smooth and skillful. It was clearly an extremely tense challenge, but from his body, there didn't seem to be the slightest bit of nervousness. Elder Wanjing narrowed his eyes, his expression turning serious. The familiar feeling in his heart grew stronger and stronger. Is it really Chu Yu? Wasn't he locked up in Min Mountain? Why is he? Haha. Wanzheng. I thought your disciple was obedient. I didn't expect him to be so stubborn. He just finished his punishment, and now he's fighting. The other elders also walked over and watched the competition with great interest. Hey, he seems to be refining pills. Suddenly, the elder who had first noticed the competition turned his head in surprise and glanced at Elder Wanzheng. Wanzheng, he didn't learn anything from you after he entered the school, right? Elder Wanzheng knew what he meant, so he replied, I didn't teach him how to refine pills. Oh, that's rare. The surrounding elders exchanged glances with each other when they heard this. Then, they began to laugh in an unknown manner. Most people wouldn't teach an 8th grade celestial physician how to refine pills, right? Yeah, I only started learning after I became a 9th grade celestial physician a year ago. Hey, but this kid's refining skills are smooth and skillful. I think he's even better than the 9th grade celestial physician. Wanzheng, you've got a good seed. The elders teased. Elder Wanzheng didn't say anything. He knew Chu Yu was talented, but he didn't expect him to be so good. If he remembered correctly, he was only 16 years old this year. If he were to succeed in this round of pill fusion, for some reason, a figure suddenly appeared in Elder Wanzheng's mind. He had the same amazing talent, and he kept getting into trouble. He clenched his fists in his sleeves. At this time, Lu Zian had finished refining pills and was waiting with the crowd. In the cauldron, the second pill was formed. As time slowly passed, the two pills finally condensed to the same size. Bang! Chu Luiyue slammed his palm down. An orb of flame wrapped around the second medicinal pill and flew up. The two pills floated in the air, facing each other. Seeing this scene, everyone unconsciously held their breaths. Here it comes. Chu Luiyue's eyes were fixed on the screen, and his mind was highly concentrated. This was the first time after her rebirth that she had directly tried to fuse her core. She had to win this round. Estimating that the temperature of the two flames had been adjusted, she took a deep breath. Two vigorous forces surged out from his dantian. Then, he poured it into his two hands. Boom! Boom! Two blazing flames instantly enveloped her hands. At the same time, she quickly raised her hands and controlled each of them. Then, she forcefully fused them together. As the two pills approached each other, they began to crazily repel each other. The flames around his body also started to become restless. Chu Luiyue did not hesitate in the slightest. He continued to increase his strength. The two medicinal pills approached at an extremely slow speed. And when their flames touched one another, whoosh! Sparks flew everywhere. The light was dazzling. Chu Luiyue's arms began to tremble slightly. She clenched her teeth and crazily urged the force in her body. Boom! On her hands, the flames burned even more fiercely. Under such strong movements, the flames of the two medicinal pills finally began to fuse. Lu Zian's heart seemed to have been ruthlessly knocked by something. A strong sense of uneasiness quickly filled his heart. Suddenly, between the two flames, there was a sound. Then, the flames that had begun to fuse actually separated from the middle again. At the same time, the two medicinal pills also began to slowly withdraw. Lu Zian's eyes brightened. I'm going to fail. If a celestial physician could not adjust the state of the two medicinal pills and forcefully fuse them, it would only lead to the complete destruction of the medicinal pills. Now, this was the situation. He could not help but laugh, his eyes full of ridicule. Blindly showing off could only lead to such a result. He already knew that Chu Yu, a mere 8th grade celestial physician, could not do it. As these thoughts flashed through his mind, the two medicinal pills in the hands of the youth opposite him had already completely separated. Moreover, the flames on them gradually dimmed. Lu Zian clenched the jade box in his hands. His heart was already surging with ecstasy. This round, he would definitely win. What a pity. On the Dongwang Bell Tower, several elders were also watching the competition below. Seeing this scene, they could not help but reveal a look of regret. Just a little bit more, in the end, he is an 8th grade celestial physician. His own strength is greatly lacking. It is indeed difficult to rely on technique to win. Another elder gave a fair evaluation and then looked at Wanzheng, who was next to him. Seeing that he was only staring at the competition below without a change in expression and not saying a word, the elders thought that he was unhappy because his disciple was about to lose. Well, no one would be able to laugh about this matter. Moreover, this was a challenge. Losing was not the most important thing. If the opponent did not let Chu Yu off, then, it would be troublesome. According to the rules, even if they were elders, it was not good for them to interfere. Wanzheng, this time Chu Yu lost, don't be disappointed. Actually, Chu Yu's talent and potential are very outstanding. In time, he will definitely surpass the person opposite him. One of the elders consoled. With your guidance, this child will definitely have a place on the green cloud roll in the future. Elder Wanjing shook his head. He won't lose. Although his voice was calm, his tone was very determined. This was not a question, but a statement. Moreover, it was an extremely confident statement. The elders looked at each other. What was Wanjing saying? Chu Yu won't lose? However, they could clearly see that the kid had already lost control of the two pills. Once the flames on them were completely extinguished, he would. How could this be? Suddenly, an elder's exclamation was heard. When the others heard that, they immediately looked over. When they saw the situation below, they all fell into a dead silence. On the spacious square, the youth who had already shown signs of weakness did not lose in a logical manner. On the contrary, the flames on the two pills in front of him actually burned wildly. The momentum was even more turbulent than before. He pressed his hands down with force. The two balls of flames instantly merged. At the same time, the two pills wrapped in them instantly merged with each other. Chu Luiyue shouted, "Condense." A shockingly rich medicinal fragrance burst out from within. The flames on her hands had completely enveloped the pill. In the next moment, the pill rushed out of the flames, trying to escape. Chu Luiyue tiptoed and actually flew up, taking the pill back. She quickly put it into the jade box that she had prepared earlier. Click. The jade box was sealed. Chu Luiyue landed lightly, her clothes fluttering. She raised the jade box in her hand, and smiled at the pale-faced Lu Ziyan in front of her. Senior Lu, want to compete? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1166. Dead silence. Everyone looked at the smiling young man. They were all shocked and speechless for a moment. Success, he actually succeeded in fusing the pill. This is impossible. Lu Ziyan suddenly shouted. He stared at Chu Luiyue. His eyes were burning with anger. It was as if he wanted to burn a hole in Chu Luiyue's body. There is definitely a problem with your pill. Chu Luiyue was not angry. Even the smile on his face did not waver. Since senior brother Lu is so sure, why don't you verify it yourself? Seeing Chu Luiyue's confident look, Lu Ziyan's heart became more and more uneasy. His heart seemed to be tightly gripped by something. He saw clearly just now that Chu Yu was clearly about to fail. But who would have thought that he would actually turn the tide? Lu Ziyan kept comforting himself in his heart. Impossible, even a 9th grade celestial physician would be helpless in that situation, let alone Chu Yu. Even if his pill did not seem to have any problems, but, with such a large fluctuation, he did not believe that it was a completely intact pill. This Chu Yu, he was most likely pretending to be calm. Thinking of this, Lu Ziyan's mood calmed down. He calmed himself down and walked forward. It seems that junior brother Chu Yu is very confident in himself. Lu Ziyan coldly said. Since that is the case, why don't you take it out first? Chu Luiyue smiled. Senior brother Lu, let's finish refining first. You go first. Lu Ziyan gritted his teeth. He was more and more sure that this kid in front of him was guilty. He coldly snorted and picked up his jade box. Everyone's gazes were focused on it. Then, Lu Ziyan opened the jade box. A vermilion pill the size of a longan fruit was lying quietly within. Everyone could clearly see the lines on it. It was indeed a 9th grade lower pill. Did you see it clearly? Lu Ziyan's tone was somewhat impatient. Just as he was about to close the jade box, Chu Luiyue suddenly spoke. Wait. Lu Ziyan frowned. Is there anything else? Chu Luiyue pointed at his jade box. Senior brother Lu, there seems to be something wrong with your pill. Lu Ziyan's face slightly changed. What nonsense are you talking about? That medicinal pill just now was a 9th grade lower grade medicinal pill, everyone saw it clearly. What problem could there be? His voice was tinged with impatience and irritation. Chu Luiyue's expression did not change, and his smile was gentle. Senior brother Lu, although I'm only an 8th grade celestial physician, I can't compare to a 9th grade doctor like you. But I've seen grade 9 pills before. The quality of your pill just now seemed to be a little off. I wonder if senior martial brother Lu would mind picking up the pill and letting everyone take a closer look. Lu Ziyan's heart jumped. This kid, how could he tell? What right do you have to question my pills? Lu Ziyan gripped the jade box tightly and asked gloomily. Chu Luiyue blinked. This is a challenge. Isn't it normal to take out the pill for everyone to see clearly? Senior martial brother Lu is so resistant, could it be that you don't dare? Lu Ziyan choked. In front of everyone, it was indeed difficult for him to refuse. He was so angry that he laughed. Good. Since that's the case, don't forget later, you have to do the same. Chu Luiyue smiled and nodded, pushing the boat with the current, of course. Senior martial brother Lu, please. This time, Lu Ziyan was in a difficult position. He gritted his teeth, opened the jade box again, and took out the pill inside. Hey! There seems to be a spot on that pill. Suddenly, a cry of surprise came from the crowd. Lu Ziyan looked at that person fiercely with a fierce gaze. The person who spoke hurriedly kept quiet. But everyone had already heard this sentence. Moreover, everyone's eyesight was quite good. Even if that person did not say it, they could see that there was indeed a dark spot on the pill. In fact, that spot was only the size of a mung bean. Moreover, it was very inconspicuous on this vermilion red pill. But this meant that the quality of this medicinal pill had already been greatly reduced. Hiss, so Lu Ziyan's pill was not refined at all? With such a large spot, can this pill still be considered a 9th grade pill? The medicinal strength is mixed and unevenly distributed. Such a pill, even if it's a 9th grade pill, the effect won't be good, right? The crowd discussed animatedly. Some celestial physician gave an extremely sharp evaluation. Lu Ziyan's face was red and white, as if he was being tortured. He had been worried about this problem before, but he did not expect it to be like this in the end. He wanted to muddle through, but who knew that Chu Yu was so treacherous and cunning? He braced himself and received everyone's various gazes, looking at Chu Luiyue with resentment and anger. You! Now, it's time for you to take out the pill and let everyone judge. Chu Luiyue slightly raised his eyebrows, opened the jade box without hesitation, and took out the pill. That pill was the same size as an ordinary pill, but the color was very strange. Dark green and light blue, 2 colors, each occupying half. The boundary was clear and the color was rich. Moreover, the surface of the pill was smooth and flat, suffused with a faint luster. With one look, one could tell that the medicinal strength was fused extremely well. But this was not the most important thing. The most important thing was that the lines on the surface were exactly the same as Lu Ziyan's previous large success pill. The pill that Chu Luiyue refined was clearly a 9th grade lower pill. When he saw the perfect color and shape of the pill, Lu Ziyan's heart was very uneasy. This uneasiness, when he saw the same level of lines, surged to the extreme. Almost in an instant, he already knew that this round, he had lost. The last trace of blood on his face faded away with a swish. The surrounding crowd, after a short moment of silence, suddenly exploded. 9th grade lower pill. Chu Yu's pill is actually a 9th grade lower pill. Moreover, this appearance is clearly stronger than Lu Ziyan's. Doesn't this mean that he won this round? I really couldn't tell that Chu Yu was actually so strong. Haha. To be able to enter Elder Wan Zheng's eyes, of course, he is not an ordinary person. Lu Ziyan originally wanted to rely on his status as a ninth-grade celestial physician to crush the other party, who would have thought that he would fail. This time, I'm afraid that his face has been completely thrown away. All kinds of voices came one after another. Lu Ziyan's heart was beating wildly, his face was burning with pain. How could he have thought that Chu Yu would actually succeed? Just now, he was still thinking that Chu Yu's pill must have a problem, but now that he saw it with his own eyes, he could clearly see that Chu Yu's pill was indeed more outstanding than his. He couldn't even refute a single word. Chu Luyue looked at him. "Senior Lu, have you seen it?" Lu Ziyan ground his teeth and said hatefully, "You win." After saying that, he fiercely swung his sleeves and was about to leave. "Wait." Chu Luyue's voice came from behind. Lu Ziyan turned his head, his brows tightly knitted, his eyes filled with disgust. "What else do you want?" Chu Luyue laughed, his eyebrows curved, and slowly said, "Did I say that this round is over?" Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1167. Lu Ziyan was startled. The crowd quietened down and looked at Chu Luyue in confusion. What did he mean? He didn't want it to end? But the competition was already over, and he even won. What was the point of continuing? You still want to continue? Lu Ziyan's brows furrowed even tighter. I've already admitted defeat, what else do you want? Chu Luyue smiled innocently. The so-called challenge competition requires both sides to agree to end the competition, isn't it? Looking at the youth's smile, Lu Ziyan's heart suddenly sank. He faintly felt that he had been tricked. You still want to compete in alchemy? Not to mention that he had already won, there was no need to continue. Even if they really had another match, the two of them didn't have much energy left. Who said we want to compete in alchemy? Chu Luyue said in surprise. Isn't the challenge competition free to play? Ha! Don't tell me you still want to fight? Lu Ziyan seemed to have heard a joke and ridiculed. He sized up Chu Luyue with undisguised contempt in his eyes. If I remember correctly, you're only at the early stage of rank 7, right? With this bit of strength, you still want to fight with me? It was normal for him to look down on Chu Luyue's level. After all, the Academy's entry standard for martial artists was rank 9 martial artists. Even if some Xian master and celestial physician weren't good at this, most of them weren't weak. Chu Luyue was at the early stage of rank 7 and was undoubtedly at the bottom of the list in the Academy. Although Lu Ziyan didn't have much talent as a martial artist, he was still an expert at the early stage of rank 8. To deal with Chu Luyue, who was at the early stage of rank 7, was a piece of cake. Moreover, a martial artists' competition was fought with real swords and spears. Without real ability, it was impossible to win by relying on unorthodox means. Obviously, from Lu Ziyan's point of view, Chu Luyue took the initiative to make such a request because he wanted to use some underhanded means to win. Otherwise, he really couldn't imagine how Chu Luyue could bridge the huge gap between the two of them. It's a challenge match anyway. What's one more round? Hearing Chu Luyue's affirmative answer, Lu Ziyan almost laughed out loud. Are you sure? Chu Luyue nodded seriously. Senior Marshal Brother Lu, please. Lu Ziyan let out a ha. Good. Then I'll fight with you. What is Chu Yu thinking? Not only did he win one match, he even wants to continue. Moreover, it's a martial arts competition. Early stage 7th stage, it's not that I look down on him, but his strength is too low. This time, if things don't go well, Lu Ziyan might be able to get back all the humiliation he suffered before, Luo Yanlin suddenly asked. How is his battle prowess? Luo Shishir didn't expect her fourth brother to take the initiative and shook her head. We've never seen him fight, so, we're not too sure. Luo Yanlin pondered for a moment. Do you know where he came from? Luo Shishir and the others shook their heads together. Chu Yu didn't seem to like to talk about this. He had always been secretive, so they didn't ask much. But, He has a very powerful yuan tool on him. After we entered the academy, the yuan tools we used to hide our aura were useless, but Chuyu didn't seem to be affected. Even Elder Wensi and the others didn't recognize it. Luo Yenming suddenly said. Oh. Luo Yenlin was surprised. There aren't many people who can have yuan tools of this level. There were two possibilities. Firstly, Chuyu had unintentionally obtained that yuan instrument through a fortuitous encounter. Second, he came from an extremely powerful family. And his position was extremely high. Their Luo family was also a first-rate family. If they didn't have yuan tools of this level, then they definitely did. It was just that this item was extremely precious, and they might not be able to get it. Even he didn't have such a treasure when he first came to the academy, let alone Luo Shishir and the others. Luo Yenlin thought to himself and looked at the arena again. That young man stood tall and straight. Although his face was still a little immature, the expression between his brows was calm and collected. His temperament didn't seem like a nameless person. Lu Yintong and the others might have kicked a metal plate this time. Wanzheng. On the Dongwang Bell Tower, a few elders were still watching the competition. One of them saw that Elder Wanzheng was in a daze and didn't know what he was thinking, so he called out to him. Elder Wanzheng snapped back to reality. What's wrong? What do you mean what's wrong? We want to ask you what's wrong. One of the elders laughed. What are you thinking about? You're so engrossed. Elder Wanzheng frowned and shook his head. Nothing. Don't think about it. Let's look at your disciple first. Not only did he win the alchemy competition, but he also wants to continue fighting with others. The elders were shocked when they saw that Chu Luiyue had successfully fused the pills and won the competition. After the shock, they were filled with envy and jealousy towards Wanzheng. Chu Yu's talent as a celestial physician was greater than they had expected. If they had known, they would have fought for it on the first day of the month. Elder Wanzheng followed their gazes and looked down. As expected, the two of them had put away their cauldrons and were facing each other from a distance, preparing to compete. One of the elders suddenly laughed. Wanzheng, not only is your disciple talented as a celestial physician, but he's also good at causing trouble. I guess you'll be busy in the future. It was a joke, but in Elder Wanzheng's ears, it was as if a layer of fog had been lifted. Something seemed to have flashed through his mind. However, before he could think clearly, Lu Xian's furious voice came from below. Absolutely not. With his thoughts in a mess, Elder Wanzheng frowned and looked down. On the square, the two of them faced each other. Lu Xian's face was flushed red and he was agitated. He pointed at Chu Luiyue. To be more precise, he was pointing at the small one on her shoulder. Although it was red and furry and looked very cute, everyone present knew that it was Chu Luiyue's contracted divine beast, red-tailed red phoenix. Moreover, this one had clearly defeated Lu Yintong's contracted divine beast before. It was obvious how strong its combat power was. If he were to really go against it. As a rank 8 warrior, Lu Xian would only have a dead end. This competition is between the two of us. If you use your contracted magical beast, it's cheating. Because of his nervousness, Lu Xian's voice was particularly sharp. Since the magical beast is contracted with the cultivator, they are partners. Living and dying together and fighting together is a matter of course. Why are you saying that I can't summon it now? Chu Luiyue tapped Dumpling's head and chuckled casually. Why don't you call your contracted magical beast out for a battle? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1168. Lu Ziyan choked in her chest and almost spat at the person in front of her. Bah! He really had the nerve to say such things. He even wanted him to summon a contract magical beast. If he also contracted a divine beast, of course he wouldn't have any qualms. But how could there be so many divine beasts in the world? Even Lu Yintong's was something that he had painstakingly asked for. And her divine beast had previously lost to Chu Yu. If it weren't for that bet, there wouldn't be such a mess today. In front of such a tyrannical divine beast, his contracted 9th grade magical beast might not even be able to withstand 3 moves. Anyway, I don't agree. This competition can only be fought by the 2 of us. The smile on Chu Liuyue's face faded a little. Her expression was restrained like this, and there was a faintly discernible cold pressure that spread out. Immediately, a cold and indifferent voice entered his ears. I said, let's compete like this. Lu Ziyan met that pair of cold and calm eyes, and his heart inexplicably felt a chill. Under the gaze of that pair of eyes, he inexplicably felt that he had become incomparably small, and unconsciously felt reverence in his heart. He shuddered. How could a teenager have such a gaze? He still wanted to refute, but for some reason, those words were stuck in his throat, and he couldn't say anything. He gritted his teeth. Fine. Let's compete. As long as he let the contracted magical beast stall the red-tailed phoenix, he could quickly finish off Chu Yu, and still win. Wind owl bird. He roared loudly, and the force around his body surged. Above his head, a huge bird beast quickly appeared. That bird beast's body was brightly colored, and its main color was dark blue. There were 9 white feathers on its head, and a pair of orange eyes, cold and indifferent. A 9th grade magical beast. In fact, a 9th grade magical beast's level was not low, but in a place like Lingxiao College, where the top powerhouses and geniuses gathered, it was very ordinary. Especially when the opponent was a real divine beast. The red-tailed phoenix with an extremely strong bloodline. Dumpling lazily opened its eyes. Perhaps it was because it had absorbed the power of Tianlei, but Chu Liyue felt that its aura was different from before. Dumpling's beautiful eyes swept over them. A trace of fear appeared in the eyes of the wind-glutton bird. That was the absolute pressure that came from his bloodline. Lu Ziyan naturally felt the subtle change in his contracted magical beast's mood, and couldn't help but be even more annoyed. Go! He let out a stern shout. As long as he could stop that red-tailed red phoenix for a moment, he would definitely be able to take care of Chu Yu. Although the Windstalk bird was afraid, it could not disobey its master's orders. It flapped its wings and flew forward. Almost at the same time, Lu Ziyan's figure also disappeared from the spot. I didn't expect to see 2 celestial physician fighting like this in a challenge, an early stage 7th order and an early stage 8th order, huh? I haven't seen a competition of this level in a long time. Interesting. I really don't know what that Chu Yu is thinking. Since he won, he should just end it beautifully. Why do he have to deliberately make things difficult for himself? Don't say, if I had such a red-tailed red phoenix, I would dare to do the same. So what if he has a divine beast? If his own strength is not enough, it will also limit the divine beast's performance. In the end, it's not certain who will win or lose. If Lu Ziyan's speed is fast enough, there is still a high chance that he can win this round. Many of the surrounding martial artists were obviously interested, and each of them had different opinions. Chu Liyue, who was on the field, more or less heard these words. Lu Ziyan's confidence increased greatly, but when he looked ahead, the youth's expression was still indifferent, as if he did not take those words to heart. Pretend. Lu Ziyan cursed in his heart. Let's see if he will still have such a calm and aloof expression when he is beaten to the point that he is looking for his teeth on the ground. At this moment, Dumpling had already flown up and faced the wind-glutton bird head-on. Thus, in Lu Ziyan's line of sight, there was only Chu Liyue left. He almost laughed out loud. Without the divine beast's protection, Chu Yu had even less of an advantage. He was simply full of flaws. Wind Thunder Fist. He mobilized the force in his body and poured it all into his right fist. Immediately, he fiercely punched forward. The wind from the fist whistled. The void shook. For this punch, Lu Ziyan used all his strength. He had to end this battle quickly. Chu Liyue stood in her original position, her footsteps slightly moved back half a step, and her knees were slightly bent. She bent her arm, pulled back, accumulated strength, and slowly clenched her fist. It was clearly an extremely ordinary action, but when she did it, it was incomparably smooth and pleasing to the eye. It was as if all the blood, flesh, tendons and bones in her body were perfectly mobilized. In front of her, Lu Ziyan's fist was already in front of her. The biting cold and terrifying pressure raised her hair, and her clothes fluttered. This astonishing power almost made people wonder if this punch would directly explode the opponent's head if it hit the face. Chu Liuyue's face was suffused with a layer of coldness. She stared straight at Lu Ziyan, who was opposite her, without any fear in her eyes. Immediately, without any hesitation, she punched out. The simplest, the most direct punch. Bang! Two fists collided. Kacha! The sound of bones breaking could be heard. The next moment, the complacent look on Lu Ziyan's face quickly disappeared, and replacing it was extreme pain. At this moment, Elder Wanzheng, who was standing on top of the Eastern Emperor Bell Tower, narrowed his eyes. Unconsciously, he took a step forward and tightly held onto the railing with one hand. This fist technique, he had seen it before. Digression, it's almost the end of the month. There is still a quota for this month's Star of Long Reviews mobile users. Please browse and read, a better reading experience from LoveNet. Looking at that youthful face and that pair of eyes that seemed to be like a black pool that could never be seen through, Lu Ziyan's heart suddenly surged with an unprecedented fear. At this moment, he suddenly realized that this young man was not someone he could provoke. Chu Liyue looked down at him and clicked his tongue. Rank 8 warrior. Aren't you a little too impatient? She thought that Lu Ziyan could at least resist for a while, but who knew that with one punch, he couldn't stand it. Compared to the puppets of the same rank that she fought with when De Bao trained her, it was like heaven and earth. What Chu Liyue didn't know was that those puppets were meticulously refined by De Bao. Other than the fact that they didn't have any force, they were the best in all aspects. She was used to fighting with those puppets, so it was naturally easy for her to fight against such a puppet. Hearing her words, everyone's hearts skipped a beat and looked at her strangely. Impatient, he is at least one rank higher than you. You're going too far by saying that. No one could understand the fear in Lu Ziyan's heart. Just now, the other party only used 2 moves, and almost didn't use any force, and he was directly crippled. This Chu Yu's physical strength could be said to be terrifying. Previously, he only thought that he was talented as a celestial physician and was mediocre as a warrior, so he shouldn't be a concern. Who knew that he was such a pervert? Lu Ziyan felt that half of his life was about to be kicked away by that kick. Bang! Suddenly, a muffled sound came from the side. Something fell to the ground, and even the ground shook. Lu Ziyan turned his head to look, and his breathing stagnated. It was his contracted magical beast, the wind squawk bird, which was directly beaten to the ground by the red-tailed phoenix's wings. Looking carefully, the feathers on the wind squawk bird's body were also charred black and messy. It looked very miserable. Chu Liyue turned his head, and the corner of his lips curled up slightly. Dumpling, I'm faster than you this time. Dumpling stepped on the wind squawk bird's face fiercely. Then, it flew to Chu Liyue's shoulder and squatted down. Hearing Chu Liyue's words, its bright eyes flashed with a trace of dissatisfaction. It was because it had swallowed the Tianlei's power, the bloodline power in its body was preparing to awaken. It took some time to adjust the power in its body, which was why it was late. Otherwise, it would definitely be faster. Chu Liyue nodded its head, and looked at Lu Ziyan meeting that pair of smiling eyes. He suddenly had an idea and shouted with difficulty, I admit defeat. I really admit defeat. I don't want to fight anymore. If he continued to fight, what would he do with the remaining half of his life left here? His words, which were filled with fear and pleading, caused everyone to completely quiet down. This scene was really strange. The two of them, one standing and one lying down, one high and one low. It should have been a competition without any suspense, but at this moment, the one begging for mercy was the higher level Lu Ziyan. Even half a quarter of an hour ago, no one would have believed that things would develop in such a direction. In the dead silence, only Lu Ziyan's begging voice was exceptionally clear. Chu Luiyue tilted his head. You admit defeat? Yes. I lost. I'm not as good as you, and I accept my loss wholeheartedly. You don't want to fight anymore? I don't want to fight anymore. Facing Chu Luiyue's questions, Lu Ziyan answered every question very quickly, without the slightest hesitation. Seeing that Chu Luiyue seemed to be lost in thought, a glimmer of hope rose in his heart, and he added, I promise, in the future, in the academy, I will never fight with you again. Chu Luiyue touched his chin. Ugh. It seems that you really don't want to fight anymore. Lu Ziyan swallowed a mouthful of saliva with difficulty. At this moment, he could no longer care about Lu Yintong's reminder to teach Chu Yu a lesson. His heart was filled with thoughts of getting out of the current situation as soon as possible. Yes. I really won't disturb you anymore. I promise. Lu Ziyan hurriedly took out his black jade token as a guarantee. You don't want to fight anymore. Chu Luiyue raised his eyebrows slightly, and suddenly smiled. A glimmer of light flashed in his eyes, and he was as sly as a fox. He whispered, how can there be such a good thing? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1170. Lu Ziyan's expression instantly froze. He looked at Chu Luiyue in disbelief, thinking that he might have heard wrongly. However, the cold smile in her eyes was a silent reminder, you didn't hear wrongly. You still want to continue? Lu Ziyan heard his own voice stuttering. Not sure if it was because of his injuries or other reasons, his voice was very weak. Coupled with his pale face, he looked like a ghost. Chu Luiyue laughed, as if he was in a good mood. Yes. Isn't this the challenge's rule? Only when both of them agree, the competition will end. If either side wants to continue, the competition cannot be stopped. As long as no lives are lost, everything else is free. Lu Ziyan's eyelids twitched. This Chu Yu, he was serious. Endless regret surged up and swallowed Lu Ziyan. He should not have arranged this challenge with Chu Yu. He should have just followed his initial plan and casually come here to exchange pointers and teach him a lesson. Why did he have to take the initiative to propose a challenge? Furthermore, it was wrong of him to promise Lu Yintong to deal with Chu Yu. But it was futile to say all these now. Chu Yu. I have already admitted defeat, what else do you want? Fear, worry, and anxiety filled Lu Ziyan's heart, causing him to explode. Anyway, Chu Yu did not intend to let him go, so there was no point in continuing to beg for mercy. These 2 times, I admit that I have lost to you. You have already won, but you are still unwilling to let me go. What do I have to do to make you give up? Chu Luiyue's face showed a trace of surprise. You are the one who proposed a challenge with me. Why are you blaming me now that you have lost? Saying this, she looked at Zhong Sun and asked sincerely. Senior Zhong Sun, in the academy, if you win a challenge, do you have to apologize to the loser? In the quiet crowd, someone suddenly could not hold back and let out a laugh. This sound was like a switch being pressed. More and more people laughed, and finally it became a mess. Ha 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 ha. That's right. The winner had to apologize to the loser. Junior apprentice brother Chu Yu, you beat senior apprentice brother to this extent, you have to properly compensate. Ha ha ha. Hurry up and help your senior martial brother Lu up. Isn't apologizing in person not enough? I'm afraid you have to prepare a generous gift, right? If you ask me, I'd say that our academy is indeed extraordinary. Even after losing, we can still act like a big shot. I'll challenge those few on the Azure Sky ranking someday and teach them a lesson. Everyone burst into laughter. All kinds of mocking words were mixed together, and every word was incomparably clear. Zhong Sun also laughed and raised his voice. Junior brother Chu Yu, don't worry. You won fair and square. We all saw it. The rules of this competition have been in place for many years and have never been changed. You just have to do what you want to do. In the academy, the strong were still respected. Lu Ziyan's face that was as pale as a ghost quickly turned red. He wished he could find a hole to hide in. He had been in the academy for more than a year and had never been so humiliated. His face had been completely lost this time. Chu Luiyue took a step forward. Her step was very light, but it seemed to carry the weight of 1,000 caddies. It heavily pressed on Lu Ziyan's heart. He panted heavily. Every part of his body was in unbearable pain. His lips trembled slightly, but he could no longer speak. Chu Luiyue raised her hand. Wait. A delicate rebuke was suddenly heard. Chu Luiyue raised his eyes and looked in the direction of the voice. The crowd consciously parted in the middle. A person slowly walked forward. It was Lu Yintong. Her beautiful face seemed to be covered with a layer of frost. Her entire body was suffused with a shocking coldness. The originally lively crowd quickly quieted down because of her arrival. Many people secretly exchanged glances. There had been rumors in the academy that Qiyu had offended Lu Yintong on Thousand Wine Mountain. Today, it seemed that the rumors were true. There was indeed a conflict between the two of them. Lu Yintong seemed to not care about the surrounding gazes. She walked straight to the front of the square, looked at Chu Luiyue, and coldly ordered. Let him go. Her tone was so matter-of-fact and arrogant. It was as if others were born to listen to her orders. Zhong Sun frowned and spoke first. Lu Yintong, this is a challenge. According to the rules, outsiders are not allowed to interfere. Lu Yintong glanced at him. Her face was full of undisguised contempt. Since when is it your turn to teach me a lesson? Zhong Sun's expression was a little ugly. The other party's ranking on the Azure Cloud roll was not low. Moreover, she occupied the warrior and celestial physician rankings at the same time. She was indeed more powerful and had more status than him. I'm not teaching anyone a lesson. I'm just stating the facts. Zhong Sun clenched the fists in his sleeves. He did not show any signs of backing down. Regardless of whether it's you or the others present, you can only watch. Whether this competition continues or not depends on the two of them. To be precise, it depends on Chu Luiyue. Boring. Lu Yintong sneered. She did not take him seriously at all. She retracted her gaze and looked at Chu Luiyue. This time, her voice was sharper, and it carried a clearer tone of command. Chu Yu, I told you to let him go. This competition will end here. Just as Zhong Sun opened his mouth, he was stopped by Chu Luiyue. Senior brother Zhong Sun, this is between senior sister Lu and me. You don't have to worry too much. Anyway, she had already offended Lu Yintong. This was not a big deal. On the other hand, there was no need for Zhong Sun to be implicated because of her. Zhong Sun wanted to say something but hesitated. After seeing Chu Luiyue's gaze, he could only suppress the impulse in his heart and nod gently. Chu Luiyue looked at Lu Yintong and smiled. Senior sister Lu, long time no see. How have you been? I wonder if that red-tailed red phoenix of yours has already been raised. It would have been fine if he did not mention this, but the moment he did, Lu Yintong's anger soared. You don't have to worry. Don't talk about this nonsense. I only want to ask you, didn't you hear what I said just now? Chu Luiyue nodded. I heard it. Since you heard it, be tactful and do as I say. Lu Yintong had always had a fiery temper and an extremely strong self-esteem. She still hadn't recovered from the loss last time. Every time she thought about it, she would still be brooding. If not for the fact that Chu Luiyue was standing on the Qingming Square, she would have already rushed forward. Oh, this, Chu Luiyue's voice was very long. There was a hint of a smile on her lips, and she looked a little careless. She stepped on Lu Jian's remaining hand with one foot. Lu Jian originally wanted to dodge, but he didn't have the time. By the time he reacted, he had already felt an intense pain coming from his hand. Chu Luiyue slowly crushed Lu Ziyan's hand, and the sound of bones breaking rang out one after another. She tilted her head and chuckled. It seems a little difficult. Because I hate it the most when others order me to do things. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1171. In the spacious square, the white jade floor was emitting a faint light. That young man stood straight with a smile on his face. His tone was casual, slightly dragging out the end of his words, which made him look especially lazy. If one only looked at his current expression, one would think that he was gently whispering something. Who would have thought that he was ruthlessly stepping on another person under his feet? Arrogant. Arrogant. Bold. Everyone who saw this scene could not help but have such thoughts in their hearts. This young man looked docile and harmless, but in fact, he was not to be trifled with. Lu Yintong never thought that even after she had sternly warned him, the other party still did not take it seriously. He even publicly humiliated Lu Ziyan. This foot seemed to be stepping on Lu Ziyan, but in fact, it was targeted at her. She was so angry that her chest violently heaved up and down. She could not help but raise her voice and become a little sharp. Chu Yu. In the academy, you better restrain yourself. After confirming that Lu Ziyan's hand bones were almost broken, Chu Luiyue lifted his foot. Lu Ziyan was in so much pain that he could not shout. He could only curl up on the ground and tremble violently. He could not describe the feeling just now. Chu Yu, he really wanted to kill him. Moreover, for some unknown reason, this person had an indescribable aura that made people not dare to underestimate him. In fact, when he restrained his expression, people would unconsciously submit to him. He had been stepped on without being able to struggle and resist. On one hand, it was because he was injured. On the other hand, it was because of Chu Yu's astonishing aura. Chu Luiyue glanced at Lu Ziyan and retracted his gaze with satisfaction. He smiled and said, Senior Lu, I don't understand what you're saying. I've only been in the academy for 11 days, and I was even locked in Pengmin Mountain for 10 days. How can I not know how to restrain myself? You, Lu Yintong gritted her teeth. This Chu Yu was not only arrogant and impudent, he was also sharp-tongued. Lu Ziyan only came to exchange pointers with you, and you put him in such a situation. I don't know Lu Ziyan. It's strange that he suddenly came to find me, isn't it? Not to mention, in order to exchange pointers with me, he purposely waited at my residence for a long time. Chu Luiyue's smile deepened as she said meaningfully. I really don't know what kind of power I, a new student who just entered the academy, have to make senior brother Lu so stubborn just to fight with me. Everyone turned to look at Lu Yintong. In fact, Chu Luiyue's words were already very clear. Lu Ziyan purposely found trouble with her because of Lu Yintong's instructions. As for the reason, it was naturally because she had lost to a new junior brother on Thousand Wine Mountain. In any case, he was still a genius ranked high on the Azure Sky rankings. Coupled with the fact that he was used to acting ostentatiously, it was inevitable that he would be arrogant and willful. How could Lu Yintong let this go? It was actually very understandable for him to do such a thing. However, she did not expect that the final outcome would be like this. Not only did Lu Ziyan fail to teach Chu Luiyue a lesson, but she also made her lose face. The way some people looked at Lu Yintong gradually changed. He took the initiative to compete with others, but he was not convinced after losing. He even deliberately used such methods to bully others behind their backs. Wasn't he too narrow-minded? She only dared to bully Chu Yu because he was a new student and did not have any background. If it was someone stronger than her or someone with a strong background, she would definitely have a different reaction. Lu Yintong felt as if there was a blade at her back. The surrounding people's gazes made her feel extremely pressured. She could not stay any longer and finally could not help but sneer. So, now you admit that you're deliberately taking revenge? Chu Luiyue smiled faintly. Senior Sister Lu, you're exaggerating when you say that I'm taking revenge. I'm just an ordinary student. I came to Lingxiao College just to improve my cultivation. I don't have any other intentions. It's just that if people don't offend me, I won't offend them. If people offend me, I can't be a pushover. Don't you think so? Lu Yintong clenched her teeth. This time, seeing that senior sister Lu is here personally, I'll let it go. Chu Luyue glanced at Lu Zi, and who was lying on the ground. Senior brother Lu, when you go back, you must recuperate well. When I'm free, I'll visit you again. Lu Zi shuddered. He did not need Chu Ning to visit him. He did not want to see this person again in the future. He stood up with difficulty and limped away. Originally, his body had suffered heavy injuries, so he couldn't stand up. However, probably because he wanted to get away from Chu Luyue too much, he gritted his teeth and held on. When he walked to Lu Yintong, he lowered his head in shame. Lu Yintong gave him an extremely cold warning look and reprimanded him in a very low voice. Useless thing. Lu Zi's body stiffened and his head lowered even more. Needless to say, his life at Lu Yintong's place would not be easy in the future. Lu Yintong suddenly took a step forward. He's no match for you. Then, what about me? Everyone quieted down. Lu Yintong was going to fight with Chu Yu. Many people, including Zhong Sun, were worried. Even if Chu Yu could defeat Lu Ziyan, he was definitely not Lu Yintong's opponent now. If the two of them really fought, Chu Yu was afraid. Just as Chu Luyue was thinking about how to answer, a familiar voice suddenly came from the side. Lu Yintong, isn't it a little shameful for you to fight with a junior who just came to the academy? Chu Luyue looked towards the source of the voice and was a little surprised. The one who spoke was actually Luo Yanlin. Strange, wasn't he hostile towards me before? Why did he take the initiative to help me now? When Lu Yintong saw that the person who spoke was Luo Yanlin, a trace of surprise flashed across her face and a little fear appeared in her eyes. The other party's strength was far higher than hers. She did not want to offend him easily. Since Luo Yanlin spoke, it meant that he was on Chu Yu's side today. Lu Yintong weighed in her heart for a moment and decided to give up. Senior brother Luo is right. She forced a smile on her face. I also saw Zi in this state and was anxious for a moment. Forget it. Since senior brother Luo is here, then today's matter, let's forget about it. Lu Yintong took a deep look at Chu Luyue one last time. Chu Yu. I look forward to seeing you enter the Azure Sky role as soon as possible. At that time, we will officially compete. After saying that, she turned and left. Lu Ziyan followed behind with difficulty and slow movements. A few people beside him came forward to help him. However, before she could take 2 steps, Chu Liyue's voice came from behind her. Senior sister Lu, wait. Lu Yintong turned back and frowned. Chu Liyue suddenly laughed. Senior sister Lu, did you forget something? Lu Yintong's frown deepened. Chu Liyue patiently reminded her. There seems to be one more thing that hasn't been fulfilled from our bet that day. Senior sister Lu, don't you remember? Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1172. Even if Lu Yintong didn't look for her, she would still go to her. She had finally won the bet, so she couldn't give up. Lu Yintong's face turned pale. Of course I didn't. Going to Thousand Wine Mountain for a month and asking for the best spot, to her, this was not something that could be easily accomplished. She thought that Chu Yu would be more restrained after being locked up in Min Mountain. She didn't expect him to be even more reckless. Then I'll have to trouble senior sister Lu to send me to the top of Thousand Wine Mountain every day for the next month. Chu Liyue's next sentence made Lu Yintong even angrier. What did you say? You want me to send you there personally? Senior sister Lu, why are you so surprised? Chu Liyue raised his eyebrows slightly. I only said that because I heard that the spot isn't fixed and we have to go there every day. If senior sister Lu doesn't go with me, how can I get the spot next to the spring? Don't you think so? Lu Yintong's chest heaved up and down violently. Senior sister Lu, the bed is set. Are you not willing? Chu Luiyue seemed to have noticed something and asked carefully. Lu Yintong was so angry that she laughed. Okay. Since you said so, I'll accompany you to the end. Don't you want to go to Thousand Wine Mountain? I'll go with you every day for the next month. She wanted to see what kind of tricks this Chu Yu could still play. Lu Yintong turned around and left angrily. Her footsteps were much faster than before. The crowd quickly made way for her. After Lu Yintong's figure disappeared, many people turned around and looked at Chu Luiyue with admiration. TSK. Could it be that this Chu Yu really went all out? From now on, he had completely fallen out with Lu Yintong, right? He was really courageous. Chu Luiyue didn't seem to notice those people's gazes. He tidied his clothes and walked down from the square. Zhong Sun quickly walked up to him. Junior brother Chu Yu, seeing his slightly worried face, Chu Luiyue smiled and comforted him. Senior brother Zhong Sun, don't worry. I know what to do. Looking at the young man's firm and indifferent eyes, Zhong Sun suddenly felt that he seemed to be much more mature and calm than he had imagined. Even she couldn't guess what he was thinking. He could only nod. Anyway, she was the one who started it, so you can't be blamed for it. Moreover, if she really wants to do something, Elder Wanzheng probably won't agree to it. As the only disciple that Elder Wanzheng had accepted in the past few years, even an idiot would know that Elder Wanzheng would definitely dote on him and would not allow him to be bullied. At this moment, another voice came from the side. Your boxing is not bad. Chu Luiyue and Zhong Sun turned around to look, and saw that Luo Yanlin and the others had unknowingly arrived. It was Luo Yanlin who spoke. He looked at Chu Luiyue from head to toe, and his eyes flashed. Early stage 7th order. Your strength doesn't seem like it. Chu Luiyue smiled and chose a euphemistic way of saying it. I'm more durable. That was true. After fighting with those puppets, her resistance might not even be comparable to a 8th order warrior, let alone someone of the same level. Of course, it was the same when fighting others. Every punch hit the flesh. It was all thanks to Dabao that she was able to win this match so easily today. Thinking of this, Chu Luiyue suddenly frowned. Dabao said that he would wait for her in the academy, but there was no movement until now. She didn't know if he was in the academy now, or why he hadn't come to find her. Chu Yu, what's wrong with you? Seeing that Chu Luiyue was a little absent-minded, Luo Shishir couldn't help but ask. Chu Luiyue came back to her senses and shook her head. Nothing, just a sudden fight, and I'm a little tired. Everyone, you've been winning from the beginning to the end, and you didn't suffer any injuries, so why are you tired? Luo Yanlin suddenly said. You seem to be quite talented in martial arts. If you have time, ask the elders and cultivate well, maybe it's not bad. If this Chu Yu was really only at the early stage of the 7th order, then the fact that he could defeat Lu Ziyan so easily was enough to prove his talent. Even if his current realm wasn't high, but in the future, maybe it was limitless. Chu Luiyue's lips curled up slightly. Thank you for your advice, senior brother Luo. In addition, today's matter can be considered as owing senior brother Luo a favor. If there is a chance in the future, Chu will definitely repay it. Luo Yanlin admired Chu Luiyue even more in his heart. The reason why he spoke was not entirely to help Chu Yu. But the other party took the initiative to accept his favor, which was indeed smart and righteous. It's just a matter of a sentence, I don't need you to repay anything. After all, you are Shishir's friend, so this small matter is not worth mentioning. In the future, cultivate well and get on the Azure Cloud list as soon as possible, then you won't be bullied like this. Chu Luiyue's expression was slightly restrained as she nodded seriously. Alright, since this matter is over, you all should go back and have a good rest, Chu Yu. Before Luo Yanlin could finish, a voice suddenly came from behind. The few of them turned their heads and saw the door of the Dongwang Bell Tower suddenly open, and Elder Wanzheng was walking out. He walked over and stopped in front of the few of them for a moment. The few of them bowed in unison. "Greetings, Elder Wanzheng." Chu Luiyue quickly glanced at his expression. "Master? Follow me." Elder Wanzheng's face was expressionless, and no one could tell what he was thinking. He only said this sentence and walked forward. The few of them looked at each other. "Why do I feel like something is wrong with Elder Wanzheng?" Luo Shishir muttered. "It's not just a feeling, it's true." Zhuo Xing's tone was firm, but his face was full of confusion. "Strange. Chu Yu, logically speaking, your master, Elder Wanzheng, should be very proud and happy that you won this challenge so beautifully." Why, he couldn't explain it, but it was strange. It didn't seem like he was happy or angry, and it was hard to fathom. Chu Luiyue shook his head. "I'll go first, I'll find you later." With that, he followed. Zhong Sun wanted to follow, but he stopped when he remembered Elder Wanzheng's expression. Chu Luiyue followed Elder Wanzheng back to his residence. This was Chu Luiyue's first time coming to ancient Cypress Mountain. She was supposed to formally acknowledge him as her master on the second day after the examination, but something happened at Thousand Wine Mountain that night, and she was directly locked up in Pengmin Mountain, so she couldn't come. The mountain was lush with green trees, and the faint fragrance of herbs filled the air. In the academy, every elder's residence was independent, so there were only the two of them on the mountain. Halfway up the mountain, in a herb field, there was a simple wooden house. The two of them walked into the house, and Elder Wanzheng finally stood still and turned around. He looked at Chu Luiyue quietly, and there was a sharp and cold light in his calmness. It was as if he wanted to see through her completely. Chu Luiyue's heart slowly tightened. Elder Wanzheng stared at her and asked word by word, "Who taught you your boxing skills?" Love Network asked. "Who taught you your boxing skills?" Chapter 1173. Chu Luiyue didn't expect him to ask this question. She couldn't help but be taken aback. Fist technique? When she made her move earlier, she didn't think much about it. She just instinctively swung her fist. Now that she thought about it, Debeo seemed to have taught her fist technique when she was fighting with those puppets. Because most of her attention was on how to deal with the puppets, she didn't pay much attention to it. Why did Elder Wanzheng suddenly ask this? Chu Luiyue pondered for a moment and answered. "I learned it from a senior." "What senior?" Elder Wanzheng continued to ask. Chu Luiyue's eyebrows twitched slightly. Judging from Elder Wanzheng's reaction, could it be that he knew Debeo? However, Debao had never mentioned his identity before, nor had he mentioned Elder Wanzheng and the others. Chu Luiyue couldn't tell what his background was and how he was related to Elder Wanzheng. "It's a senior I met by chance," Chu Luiyue said slowly. "I've sparred with him before, so I learned these moves along the way." "You sparred with him?" Elder Wanzheng asked in an inexplicable tone. Chu Luiyue's heart skipped a beat. She felt that Elder Wanzheng's gaze could see through her. "Where is he now?" Chu Luiyue shook her head. "I don't know." She really didn't know. Although Debeo said that they would meet in the academy, there wasn't even a trace of him. After entering the academy, she didn't have the time to look for him. Moreover, because she didn't know his identity, she didn't dare to make a big fuss. "You don't know?" Elder Wanzheng obviously didn't believe her. He stared at the young man in front of him for a long time, but he couldn't figure out anything. This caused his originally firm belief to waver a little. "You really don't know?" Chu Luiyue sighed softly. "I really don't know." The room fell silent for a moment. Elder Wanzheng sighed. "He's willing to teach you this fist technique. It's obvious that he thinks highly of you." His tone seemed to be nostalgic. Judging from his tone, he didn't seem to be hostile. Chu Luiyue thought in her heart and asked cautiously. "Master, do you know him?" Elder Wanzheng was startled. Soon after, he laughed bitterly. You could say that. Chu Luiyue was even more confused. What do you mean? Sort of. You brat, your luck is pretty good. Elder Wanzheng looked at her with a complicated gaze. There seemed to be something moving in his eyes. Chu Luiyue spoke after some deliberation. To be able to receive guidance from that senior, this student also feels honored. Elder Wanzheng nodded, then shook his head and smiled. No wonder. As an early stage of the 7th step, you were actually able to defeat Lu Ziyan. With that person's guidance, what was a mere Lu Ziyan? Chu Luiyue didn't say anything. Elder Wanzheng suddenly smiled helplessly. If I had known about this earlier, I might not have accepted you as my disciple back then, Master. What do you mean? Chu Luiyue was a little surprised. Elder Wanzheng looked at her meaningfully. You hid your talent as a martial artist, didn't you? Chu Luiyue laughed. Master is joking. If your talent isn't enough, you definitely won't be able to invite him to teach you. He has always hated stupid people the most. Elder Wanzheng waved his hand. Chu Luiyue recalled the days she spent with Dabao, and 2 streams of hot tears welled up in her heart. That's true. Even someone like her couldn't avoid being despised by Dabao all the time, let alone others. Although I don't know why you are only at the early stage of the 7th step, your combat strength is not bad. Your future potential is limitless, and you have a lot of potential. Elder Wanzheng patted Chu Luiyue's shoulder. Don't mention this to anyone for the time being. However, if Elder Bo Yan and the rest ask you, just answer truthfully. Chu Luiyue nodded. This student understands. If you have time in the future, go to the martial artist's side to learn more. Don't fall behind. Elder Wanzheng's reminder made Chu Luiyue feel that it was a little strange. This meant, cough. If you meet that person in the future and are criticized for not being strong enough, don't say that I didn't give you time to cultivate. Elder Wanzheng tried his best to defend himself. If he had known that Chu Yu had caught the eye of that person, he wouldn't have snatched him to be his disciple. However, he was in a difficult position now, and this child was indeed very talented in celestial physician. He really couldn't bear to give up. Therefore, he could only use this compromise. Chu Luiyue was speechless. She vaguely felt that Elder Wanzheng seemed to be respectful towards Dabao. His tone and demeanor were not normal at all. She paused for a moment and asked tentatively, Master, that person, is he also an elder of the academy? Elder Wanzheng looked at her with a strange expression. Chu Luiyue was speechless. Why do I feel like I'm being looked down on? It's fine if you don't know. If there is a chance in the future, you will know. Elder Wanzheng sighed. Where's your black jade token? Chu Luiyue took it out and handed it over. Elder Wanzheng took out his green jade token. A stream of light flew out from his token and entered Chu Luiyue's token. Chu Luiyue saw that the points on his token had suddenly increased by 100,000. This is a small gift from me to you. These points are enough to support you for 2 to 3 months. When you break through to the 9th grade celestial physician, I will naturally reward you. Of course, the faster you can get on the Qingyun roll, the more rewards you will receive. As he spoke, Elder Wanzheng handed over an ancient book. In this medical book, there are prescriptions for 9th grade medicinal pills. During this period of time, study it well and strive to break through as soon as possible. If you lack any herbs, just use your points to exchange for them at the Medicine Wind Valley. Chu Luiyue took it with both hands. Thank you, Master. Elder Wanzheng nodded and asked again. By the way, how were you in Pengmin Mountain for the past few days? How was it? Love Network has a better reading experience. Chapter 1174. Chu Luiyue wanted to say that she was doing well there and even wanted to go there again. But in the end, her rationality still made her swallow these words. She lowered her head slightly. It's only right for a student to be punished for her mistakes. Seeing her like this, Elder Wanzheng couldn't bear to reprimand her. Since this matter is over, let's forget about it and let bygones be bygones. Thousand Wine Mountain isn't a place where students can enter as they wish. Don't do this again, understand? Chu Luiyue answered obediently. Thank you for your guidance, master. Elder Wanjing nodded in satisfaction. All right, go back and study the prescription in this book. If there's anything you don't understand, feel free to ask me. After that, he gave Chu Luiyue a few more instructions and let her leave. Who was Debeo? On the way back, Chu Luiyue kept thinking about this question. Judging from Elder Wanzhang's attitude, Debeo's status should be quite high. After all, he was a divine-level expert who had forged a divine body. Even in the entire Lingxiao College, he should be an extremely powerful existence. Perhaps she should ask Debeo the next time she saw him. She quickly returned to her residence. Zhong Sun was already waiting at the door. When he saw her return, his face lit up. Junior Chuyu, how are you? Did Elder Wanzhang do anything to you? Chu Luiyue laughed. He's my master. Of course he wouldn't do anything to me. Senior Zhong Sun, you worry too much. Zhong Sun scratched his head in embarrassment. I was just anxious. After all, when Elder Wanjing brought you away, he didn't look too good. That didn't seem like a good thing. Chu Luiyue thought for a while and said, with a disciple like me who causes trouble as soon as she arrives, it's inevitable that master will have a headache. There was no way to refute this. Even Zhong Sun had to admit that Chu Luiyue was really good at causing trouble. How long had she been here and she had already caused so much trouble? You still know? Anyway, your name has already spread in the Lingxiao College. Many people are waiting to see you and Lu Yintong fight. Chu Luiyue chuckled and walked towards his courtyard. What's there to see? She bullied you so much, are you going to let it go just like that? Zhong Sun felt a little strange. I thought you said you wanted her to accompany you to Wanjiu Mountain for a month on purpose. I did it on purpose. However, it wasn't just to vent my anger. Chu Luiyue looked lazy. She's only ranked in the 40s on the Ascension rankings, but there are numerous people that want to go to Myriad Wine Mountain, and there's no lack of people that are as formidable as her or even stronger. Even if I bring her black feather token with me, I'm afraid some people won't give me face. What should I do then? I don't want to offend more people. Therefore, it was most appropriate to bring her along. Not only would he be able to hold his head high and take her down a notch, but he would also be able to pull her to the front when there was an unexpected situation. Why wouldn't he do it? Zhong Sun's expression changed slightly, and then he slowly raised his thumb. You are ruthless enough. After today's incident, everyone thought that Chuyu did this to take revenge on Lu Yintong. However, Chuyu was actually doing it for Myriad Wine Mountain. From the beginning to the end, his goal was never Lu Yintong. However, no matter what, Lu Yintong is still an extremely powerful genius on the Ascension rankings. I heard that she has been diligently cultivating a martial technique recently, wanting to break through her own strength. If she really succeeds, then, charging into the top 40 isn't impossible. At that time, Chu Luiyue stood still, tilted his head, and asked with interest. Is the top 40 very powerful? Zhong Sun was stunned. Seeing the casual look of the youth opposite him, his heart skipped a beat, and he subconsciously thought that the other party was comparing Lu Yintong to Luo Yanlin. The top 40 is quite powerful. Of course, compared to Luo Yanlin, it's still a lot worse. But Chuyu, you also know that relying on others is ultimately better than relying on yourself, right? Luo Yanlin could help once, but he couldn't help every time, right? Chu Luiyue pressed a hand on the door and was about to open it when he suddenly stopped. Thank you, senior brother Zhong Sun. She turned around and said seriously. Zhong Sun relaxed a little and smiled. Anyway, it's fine as long as you know what you're doing. With your talent, it won't be long before you can enter the Ascension rankings. It's not impossible for you to catch up in the future. Junior brother has been busy for so long, it's time for you to have a good rest. I won't disturb you anymore. Chu Luiyue nodded slightly. Zhong Sun quickly left. Chu Luiyue pushed the door and entered. She carefully locked the door. Click. Your troublemaking personality really hasn't changed at all. A cold but soft voice came from behind. Although the tone was as cold and dignified as possible, it was a pity that the voice was too childish, and it sounded especially out of character. Instead, it made people want to rush up and ravage him, mess up his hair, and pinch his little face. Chu Luiyue held back her laughter and turned around. In the room, who was sitting upright and obediently, if it wasn't Dugu Mabao who she hadn't seen for a long time. Today, he was still wearing the same purple brocade clothes, and his chubby and fair little face was no different from before. Chu Luiyue's hands suddenly felt a little itchy. Then, she met Dugu Mabao's pair of magnificent and bewitching eyes. The two of them looked at each other for a moment. Dugu Mabao seemed to have seen through her thoughts, and his expression gradually became dangerous. A faint chill spread out from his body. Cough. Chu Luiyue hurriedly coughed and walked forward. Dabao, where have you been before? Why are you only here now? He was still talking about it just now, and now he appeared. It was really, Dugu Mabao sneered. If you weren't locked up in Mount Pingmin, would I have to wait for you for so long? Chu Luiyue suddenly felt guilty. I didn't do it on purpose, she didn't explain too much, because she had an inexplicable feeling that Dabao should know about this. As expected, Dabao didn't ask too much, and only frowned. If you had broken through earlier, your strength wouldn't have been so tyrannical, and you wouldn't have been bullied so wantonly. Still too weak. Chu Luiyue was speechless. She knew that he wouldn't be able to say anything else. They had just met, and the topic was brought up again. She rubbed her eyebrows, wanting to defend herself. I want to become stronger, but I need time. Could it be that I can continue to break through and directly become a god-level powerhouse? Dugu Mabao glanced at her coldly. Chu Luiyue said. I'll work hard. It's good that you know. Dugu Mabao let her go. Since you're already in the academy, you should seize the time and opportunity to cultivate well. Chu Luiyue looked at him, suddenly leaned closer, and asked curiously. Dabao, today, Elder Wanzheng saw that I used the fist technique you taught me, and he even asked about you. You. Dugu Mabao's expression didn't change. Don't worry about him. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1175. Chu Luiyue. But he's my master now. It's not good not to tell him, right? He won't ask too much. Dugu Mabao was calm and composed as he spoke with great certainty. You can just say whatever you want and send him away. Chu Luiyue, that's Elder Wanzheng. How can you send him away just like that? Chu Luiyue became more and more certain of her guess. She gritted her teeth and asked secretly. Dabao, your status is higher than Elder Wanzheng's, isn't it? Dugu Mabao glanced at her as if he was looking at a fool. Chu Luiyue obediently swallowed the rest of her words. Fine. Damn it. I shouldn't have asked that question. How was it in Mount Pingmin? Dugu Mabao suddenly changed the topic and asked casually. Chu Luiyue leaned against the chair and rested her chin on one hand. In front of Dugu Mabao, there was no need for her to hide these things. She said very honestly, it was pretty good. No, it was very good. She touched her chin. I think I can go there a few more times. If others heard this, they would probably think that Chu Luiyue had gone crazy. However, Dugu Mabao didn't say anything. He just lowered his eyes slightly. His thick and long eyelashes trembled slightly, hiding the emotions in his eyes. What do you mean? He asked faintly. Chu Luiyue briefly told him what happened in Mount Pingmin. Anyway, when I was cultivating there, it was very smooth. It seemed to be more. Chu Luiyue paused. For a moment, she didn't know how to describe that feeling. Convenient? Comfortable? She couldn't say. She had the Tianjing Yuan meridian, and her ability to devour the heaven and earth force was extremely strong. However, when she was inside, the heaven and earth force was vast and majestic, but it was exceptionally gentle. When it entered her body, it didn't take much effort for her to completely integrate into her own strength. She had never felt this way before. Is there something special about that place? Was that why the origin power inside was different from the outside world? Chu Luiyue looked at Dugu Mabao. Debao, what do you think? Even though Elder Wanjing said that he wasn't an elder of the academy, Chu Luiyue thought that he should have a close relationship with Lingxiao College. Then, perhaps he knew more about Pengmin Mountain? Pengmin Mountain's 7 pagodas are a special existence in the academy. Otherwise, it wouldn't be one of the places where severe punishments are carried out. Dugu Mabao's tone was indifferent, as if he had no interest in this. Your experiences. There's nothing strange about them. Chu Luiyue nodded thoughtfully, but there was still one thing he did not understand. Since it's a punishment, I should feel terrible after going in. Why is it the opposite? Dugu Mabao raised his eyes and asked in a calm voice. When did you become like a normal person? Chu Luiyue was speechless. For a moment, she couldn't refute. Her cultivation experience was indeed different from that of ordinary people. Maybe I'm fated with Pengmin Mountain? She muttered in a low voice. To be precise, she was fated with the space behind that door. She had chosen the same thing twice in a row. If she went there again, would she still choose the same thing? As soon as this dangerous thought appeared, Chu Luiyue forcibly suppressed it. She came to the academy to cultivate diligently, not to cause trouble. You're about to break through to the middle of the 7th level? Dugu Mabao looked at her again. Chu Luiyue laughed. Yes. I thought that it might not be so fast, but I didn't expect that after cultivating in Pengmin Mountain for 10 days, my progress would be so fast. If this continued, it wouldn't be long before she could officially break through. Dugu Mabao waved his small hand, and a chessboard with a faint glow appeared between the two. In that case, let's continue the game from last time. This time, Chu Luiyue took the most steps ever since she played chess with Dugu Mabao. Of course, in the end, she was still exhausted and almost exhausted. However, perhaps because he knew that she had experienced a lot today, Dugu Mabao quickly let her go. Looking at the completely dark sky outside, Debao stood up and flew down from the chair. Chu Luiyue asked in surprise. Debao, you're leaving? Dugu Mabao didn't look back and nodded slightly. You just have to stay here and cultivate properly. Where are you going? At this point, Chu Luiyue suddenly remembered that she hadn't asked him where he had been all this time. If he was also in the academy, then, I have a place to go. Dugu Mabao's answer was extremely simple, and it was obvious that he had no intention of continuing. This time tomorrow, I'll be here again. Chu Luiyue hurriedly called out to him, Hey, Debao. I won't be here at this time tomorrow. Dugu Mabao turned around and frowned. What do you mean? Actually, I'll be going out later. For the next month, I won't be staying here at night. Dugu Mabao suddenly understood something, and his devilish purple eyes narrowed dangerously. You are going to Thousand Wine Mountain? Chu Luiyue nodded honestly. It wasn't easy to win the bet, of course I can't give it up. She had already offended Lu Yintong, wouldn't it be a great loss if she didn't go? Dugu Mabao snorted coldly. Or is it because of that red-tailed phoenix? As soon as he finished speaking, Dumpling ran out and squatted on Chu Luiyue's shoulder. It shook its wings and nodded vigorously with a face full of pride. Of course. Dugu Mabao looked at it coldly. Even if you don't go, as your strength increases, the bloodline in its body will gradually be stimulated. Chu Luiyue wasn't surprised that Dugu Mabao knew about this. She shrugged and smiled. I know, but since I have this opportunity, I don't want to give it up. If I break through to the divine level, who knows how long I'll have to wait. Dugu Mabao frowned slightly. He wanted to say something but stopped himself. Actually, it might not take too long, but he couldn't tell her this. Since you've made up your mind, then so be it. But, Dugu Mabao paused. You're not allowed to stay in Thousand Wine Mountain during the forbidden period. Chu Liuyue's heart skipped a beat. She chuckled. No. I've been locked up once, there won't be a second time. Dugu Mabao looked at her with a heavy gaze. Chu Liyue suddenly had an idea. Debao, you know the secret of the spring on Thousand Wine Mountain, don't you? Dugu Mabao didn't say anything. Then, why don't you tell me? Ahem, I'm joking. Chu Liyue was halfway through her sentence when she tactfully stopped. Dugu Mabao turned and walked outside. Chu Liyue didn't give up and asked. Debao, tell me, if I really make a big mistake in the academy, or if I offend someone powerful, this little life of mine. Dugu Mabao stopped in his tracks. With me around, no one can take your life. Besides, he sneered. Rong Xiu isn't an idiot. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1176. Chu Liyue was a little surprised. She did not expect him to mention Rong Xiu all of a sudden. Moreover, why did his words sound so strange? However, it's one thing for you to have a backer. It's another thing for you to not court death. Dugu Mabao opened the door. Although you can't continue most of your previous training in Lingxiao College, I'll still personally teach you when I'm free. With that, he took a step forward. In the next moment, that small figure disappeared into the thick night sky. Hey, you, Chu Liyue came back to her senses and rubbed the space between her eyebrows. She could almost imagine what kind of days awaited her in the future. She picked up Dumpling and walked out. Let's go. While we're still free, let's go wander around to our heart's content. Thousand Wine Mountain. Thousand Wine Mountain opened from evening to early morning. At this time, many students had already gathered at Thousand Wine Mountain. However, compared to the day before, there were much fewer people. For most of the students in the college, Thousand Wine Mountain was a place for entertainment. It was good to come once in a while, but there was no need to come every day. Moreover, Chu Liyue and Lu Yintong's matter had caused a stir recently. Many people were afraid and did not want to cause trouble, so they did not come. As soon as Chu Liyue arrived at Thousand Wine Mountain, she attracted everyone's attention. Countless pairs of eyes fell on her with different expressions. However, Chu Liyue turned a blind eye to it and walked straight up. She finally stopped when she was about to reach the top of the mountain. At this time, the space beside the spring was almost full. Lu Yintong's figure did not appear among them. Chu Liyue looked at a young man beside her. Senior Sister Lu is not here today? It was obvious who Senior Sister Lu was referring to. The young man was stunned for a moment and nodded subconsciously. I didn't see her. Chu Liyue raised her eyebrows slightly. It seemed that Lu Yintong did not take her words to heart. It was already so late, but he still hadn't come. She could wait, but Dumpling didn't have the patience. Chu Liyue stood in place and waited for about 15 minutes before Lu Yintong finally arrived. Gong Sheng, who had been with her that day, also came with her. Senior Lu, you've made me wait for a long time. Chu Liyue was the first to speak with a smile. After seeing Chu Liyue, Lu Yintong's expression, which had finally calmed down, changed again. However, the gazes of the people around her made her swallow her words. Something came up at the last minute. She said impatiently, her tone cold. Chu Liyue didn't intend to waste time blaming her. He smiled. Senior apprentice Sister Lu is a busy person. It's already very difficult for her to make time. Please. Lu Yintong gritted her teeth. This was only the first day, and she already felt humiliated. She really didn't know how she was going to endure the next month. However, she had already made a promise in front of so many people. If she went back on her word, her reputation in the academy would be ruined. Therefore, no matter how uncomfortable it was, she had to continue. She took a deep breath and looked at the top of the mountain. When she saw the faces of those people, her expression changed slightly. Why are they here today? When Chu Luiyue saw her expression, an idea popped up in her mind. She also looked over and quickly sized up the few people. There were men and women, and they were all dressed in luxurious clothes. They seemed to be the children of aristocratic families. Most importantly, the aura around those people was not much weaker than Lu Yintong's. Moreover, judging from Lu Yintong's expression, those people might be stronger than her. Senior Lu, is there a problem? Chu Luiyue asked gently. Lu Yintong slowly clenched her fists, her nails digging into her palms. He still has the nerve to ask. But at this moment, she had no choice but to bite the bullet and continue. She turned her head, lowered her voice, and said word by word, 1 month later, we'll settle this score properly. The threat and warning in her words were undisguised. Chu Luiyue's face showed a trace of guilt. Originally, I thought that if Senior Lu felt that it was difficult, then I would temporarily forget about today. But since Senior Lu said that there's no problem, then I will naturally accept. As she said that, the corners of her lips curled up slightly. Senior Lu, you're a woman of your word. You're really a role model for our generation. Chu Luiyue didn't lower her voice when she said these 2 sentences, so quite a few people around her heard them clearly. For a moment, the atmosphere became strange. Lu Yintong didn't expect that she would dare to play such a trick in front of so many people. Her expression almost collapsed. You, Ah Tong. Just as Lu Yintong was about to explode, Gongxing suddenly spoke, pulling her back to her senses. We still have other things to do later. Let's deal with junior brother Chu Yu's problem as soon as possible. Otherwise, junior brother Chu Yu will suspect that you forgot again. As Gongxing spoke, he looked meaningfully at Chu Luiyue. Although he was smiling, his words were filled with undisguised sarcasm. He wasn't present during the day, but he had heard everything from Lu Yintong. Although he was shocked that a rank 7 warrior like Chu Luiyue was able to defeat Lu Ziyan, who was an entire rank higher, he still felt contempt and disdain for Chu Luiyue. In his opinion, there was a problem with Chu Luiyue's victory. He must have used some underhanded method. In addition, he later asked Lu Yintong to send him tens of thousands of wine mountains for a month. In his heart, he hated Chu Luiyue even more. Chu Luiyue didn't care about this at all. No matter what they said, as long as what needed to be done was done, nothing else mattered. Thus, she replied with a smile, Senior brother Gongxing is right. My memory has always been bad. In the next month, I hope that senior sister Lu will forgive me. Lu Yintong's chest seemed to have a ball of flames surging crazily, almost burning her to ashes. Without saying a word, she lifted her foot and walked up. Gongxing followed closely behind. When he passed by Chu Luiyue, he stopped in his tracks and looked sideways at Chu Luiyue deeply. You have guts. He still had a smile on his face, but the words that came out of his mouth were cold and sinister, making people shudder. Chu Luiyue chuckled, thank you for your praise, senior brother Gongxing. Gongxing took a deep breath, turned around, and quickly followed Lu Yintong. Chu Luiyue raised his eyebrows and slowly walked over. Lu Yintong came to the spring at the top of the mountain. The few people who were already standing there heard the commotion and turned their heads to look. Lu Yintong stood still, took a deep breath, and said politely, Liang Xiaoxiao, is there another seat here? Can I? No. A delicately dressed woman interrupted her and said lazily, that's right. There's already someone here. He should be here soon. If you want to come, you should come early tomorrow. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1177. Liang Xiaoxiao was very direct. Obviously, she did not intend to give Lu Yintong any face. This was because she was ranked 39th on the warrior leaderboard. Much higher than Lu Yintong. One had to know that the competition on the Qingyun leaderboard was very fierce. Every time one moved up a rank, it meant that one's strength was much stronger than the previous one. Lu Yintong naturally did not dare to offend Liang Xiaoxiao. Of course, there was another reason. Liang Xiaoxiao was born in a first-rate family, much more powerful than Lu Yintong's second-rate family background. Even though everyone in the academy rarely talked about this matter, it didn't mean that they could really ignore this matter. After all, they would not stay in the academy forever. In the future, when they left the academy, they would have to face these problems if they wanted to survive in the realm of God. If he offended someone with a strong background here, his future days would not be easy. Therefore, the arrogant Lu Yintong did not get angry when she was given the cold shoulder. In fact, the expression on her face became even more courteous. I wonder who that person is. I can use points to exchange with him. Liang Xiaoxiao seemed to have heard a joke. She suddenly covered her mouth and laughed. Points? Do we look like people who lack those things? Her tone was light as if she was teasing, but to Lu Yintong, it was very harsh. It was not that Liang Xiaoxiao and the others did not lack points. In Lingxiao College, the importance of points was self-evident. No one would complain about having more points. But relatively speaking, they did not need to exchange such things for points. It was embarrassing. These words were indeed mocking Lu Yintong. Lu Yintong was also in a dilemma. Who would have thought that she would meet this group of people on the first day? Normally, they wouldn't come here, but for some reason, they actually came together today. Moreover, they took all the seats and did not give her any chance at all. She did not want to offend these people, but there was still the aggressive Chuyu behind her. Just as Lu Yintong was thinking about how to speak again, Liang Xiaoxiao's eyes lit up and she waved behind Lu Yintong. Ziyuan. Come quickly. I've been waiting for you for a long time. Hearing this, everyone present turned to look at him. Lu Yintong's heart skipped a beat, and she quickly turned around. When she saw who it was, her face turned ugly. Jiang Jiwan? The person that Liang Xiaoxiao said didn't come was her? Jiang Ziyuan's movements were light as she floated down. Under the moonlight, there was a sense of ethereal immortality. The crowd was silent for a moment, and many people's eyes flashed with surprise. Jiang Jiwan didn't seem to notice these gazes at all. She walked straight towards them and said with a faint smile, "I'm sorry for being late. I was going to come just now, but I comprehended something at the last minute, so I'm late." Liang Xiaoxiao smiled enchantingly. Another breakthrough? Jiang Jiwan blushed and shook her head. Not so fast. Then it's still fast. Liang Xiaoxiao and the others looked at each other. Look at you, didn't you just break through not long ago? In the blink of an eye, he was about to break through again. If this goes on, all of us will be completely defeated by you. I won't play with you anymore. That's right. Ziyuan, when you're cultivating, you should consider other people's feelings. My heart is about to be shattered into pieces by you. Haha. Ren Ziyuan is going to chase after senior brother Rongxiu. How can you compare to her? The last young man's unintentional words caused the originally noisy and lively atmosphere to instantly turn stiff and cold. The smile on Jiang Jiwan's face froze for a moment, and then faded a lot. Liang Xiaoxiao glared at the man who didn't know what to say. Senior brother Rongxiu's strength is tyrannical. Of the 4 rankings of the Azure Sky Roll, he has taken first place in 2. Who in the academy doesn't have him as their goal? What's there to say? The man hurriedly said, "Yes, yes. I also have the same idea. However, senior brother Rongxiu is a rare top genius. Ordinary people can't be compared to him, right?" Jiang Jiwan said indifferently, "He is naturally the most powerful. How can I be compared to him?" Everyone looked at each other, and the atmosphere was very awkward. Who in the academy didn't know that Jiang Jiwan was infatuated with Rongxiu? Although Rongxiu had already left when she entered the academy and rarely came back, Everyone was well aware of her relationship with Rongxiu. Everyone thought that she would be Rongxiu's princess consort. Who knew? Liang Xiaoxiao's eyes turned, and there was a natural seductive look in her eyes. Aya, what's the point of saying all that? Ziyuan, you haven't been to Thousand Wine Mountain for a long time, right? Come quickly. This spring water seems to be sweeter than before. Jiang Jiwan forced a smile and was about to walk over when she saw Lu Yintong standing at the side. A trace of disgust flashed across her eyes. Lu Yintong? Why are you here? Lu Yintong secretly thought that enemies were bound to meet on a narrow road. She actually bumped into Jiang Jiwan. It was also her fault for being too careless. Liang Xiaoxiao and the others had always been close to Jiang Jiwan. When she saw them just now, she should have thought of this. If she left immediately, it would seem that she was guilty. Isn't Thousand Wine Mountain a place where everyone can come? Lu Yintong asked. Jiang Jiwan's lips twitched without a smile. That's true. Then, please go ahead. With that, she lifted her feet and walked forward, not even looking at her. It was as if she didn't care about Lu Yintong at all. Lu Yintong was secretly angry and turned to leave. But after taking a few steps, she was stopped by someone. Senior Sister Lu, where are you going? Chu Luyue stood in front of her and raised an arm to block her way. You haven't fulfilled your promise to me yet. Lu Yintong was very annoyed. Let's call it a day. We'll talk about it tomorrow. With that, she was about to force her way out. However, Chu Luyue held her back tightly and didn't give her a chance to move forward. Senior Sister Lu, I'm really sorry. I don't want to wait until tomorrow. If you continue to push it to the day after tomorrow, then the day after tomorrow. What's the point of this bet? Lu Yintong gritted her teeth. I said tomorrow. Chu Liyue's eyes moved back and forth between her and Jiang Jiwan. It seemed that the two of them had a deep grudge. She didn't expect to meet them so directly today. There were several people on the other side and they seemed to be very confident. No wonder Lu Yintong wanted to leave. If she stayed, wouldn't she be humiliated for nothing? However, Chu Luyue didn't intend to care about this. She only wanted Lu Yintong to fulfill her promise. Senior Sister Lu, I also said that I don't want to wait until tomorrow. Chu Liyue's tone became more serious. At this moment, Liang Xiaoxiao's coquettish laughter suddenly sounded. Hey, Lu Yintong, have you fallen to the point where you're threatened by junior brother? I remember how glorious it was when you confessed to senior brother Rongxiu in public. How did it end up like this? Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1178. Liang Xiaoxiao. Lu Yintong was like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. Her hair stood on end and she could no longer hold it in. She let out a sharp cry. Don't forget that I'm still your senior sister. Show some respect. Senior sister? Liang Xiaoxiao's smile blossomed. You entered the academy half a year earlier than us, but your strength is far behind our senior sister? Her words were full of sarcasm. Lu Yintong's face was red with anger. There seemed to be flames burning in her eyes. These people, they're too much. Chu Luyue raised his eyebrows slightly. Confess, in public? It seems like Rongxiu is quite popular in the academy. No wonder the atmosphere between Lu Yintong and Jiang Jiwan is so strange. When rivals meet, their eyes will be exceptionally red. They must have fought several times in public and in secret. However, Lu Yintong was obviously at a disadvantage now. The other party had the advantage in numbers and was stronger than her. It was normal for her to be humiliated like this. Xiao. Jiang Jiwan spoke, as if she wanted to make peace. That's all in the past. Why bring it up again? Anyway, the person standing next to Rongxiu was not either of them. Jiang Jiwon had long known that there were countless people in the academy who had a crush on Rongxiu. If she were to target each and every one of them, she would have been exhausted. The reason why she was in such a mess with Lu Yintong was because the bird that stuck its head out would be shot. There were so many people who liked Rongxiu, but most of them did not even dare to say a word to him. However, Lu Yintong confessed to Rongxiu in public. This matter was so big that Jiang Jiwon had been brooding over it. Although Rongxiu did not even look at Lu Yintong at that time, it had happened. Jiang Jiwon could not get over it. What was even more ridiculous was that Rongxiu had said something to Lu Yintong. He said he already had someone he liked. These words were not only for Lu Yintong, but also for the other girls in the academy who were ready to make a move. After Lu Yintong found out, she thought it was Jiang Jiwon, so she went to Jiang Jiwon's place to make a fuss. Thus, the two of them became enemies. Even after Rongxiu left the academy, there was still a deep gap between the two of them. Every time they met, they would fall into this kind of awkward situation. It was fine at first, but as time passed, Jiang Jiwon caught up and gradually surpassed Lu Yintong. Because of the rumors about her relationship with Rongxiu, many people in the academy wanted to befriend her. Jiang Jiwon's strength had increased greatly, and she had expanded her network. She quickly crushed Lu Yintong. As a result, Lu Yintong's days in the academy gradually became difficult. Even though Jiang Ziyuan didn't finish her sentence, everyone could tell that she didn't care about Lu Yintong at all from her nonchalant attitude. Liang Xiaoxiao laughed coquettishly. Okay. Since you said so, then, Senior Lu, I won't see you out. Lu Yintong's expression turned stern. She was about to retort when Gong Xing pulled her back. There was a rare look of worry on his usually cynical face. Ah, Tong, bear with it for a while. They were indeed no match for those people now. Lu Yintong shook off his hand. I can walk on my own. However, she had just taken half a step when she heard Jiang Jiwon's voice behind her. There's nothing to be angry about. There's no need to lose your dignity for such people. Hearing this, the suppressed anger in Lu Yintong's heart finally exploded. She turned around angrily and walked back quickly. Gong Xing saw that her expression was not right and quickly pulled her back. Ah, Tong, Lu Yintong quickly dodged, not even letting him touch her. Sensing that Lu Yintong was going back on her words, Liang Xiaoxiao and the others looked back. Jiang Jiwon. Lu Yintong stood still and stared at Jiang Jiwon. Jiang Jiwon frowned slightly. Lu Yintong sneered. Who do you think you are? Do you think Rongxiu really cares about you? The academy has already spread the news that Rongxiu already has a princess. And that person isn't you at all. You've always thought of yourself as the future princess of Yuntian Tower, but in the end, you didn't even get the status of a concubine, did you? Her words were spoken quickly and anxiously, like a string of cannons flying out, not giving anyone time to react. Jiang Jiwon's expression finally changed. Lu Yintong, you're presumptuous. Lu Yintong sneered. I'm presumptuous? Who do you think you are to speak to me in such a manner? In terms of background, the Tomb of Immortal Water is just one of the many tribes that rely on Yuntian Tower. At most, you're a second-rate family. In terms of seniority, you entered the academy later than me. Don't you understand the principle of seniority? In terms of strength, your ranking on the warrior rankings is indeed higher than mine, but I'm famous on both rankings. If we really compare, I might not be much worse than you. Even the princess of Yuntian Tower hasn't come to criticize me. You think you can? Slap. Jiang Jiwon finally couldn't hold back and directly raised her hand to slap Lu Yintong. Her combat strength was higher than Lu Yintong's, so Lu Yintong couldn't dodge this slap. There was dead silence all around. Chu Luiyue touched his chin with interest, half smiling. A certain someone's absence could still cause such a huge commotion, really, Jiang Jiwon. Gong Xing immediately stepped forward and blocked Lu Yintong, his brows tightly knitted. You're too much. Jiang Jiwon regretted it after she slapped Lu Yintong. She had always maintained a good image in the outside world. Who would have thought that she would hit Lu Yintong in the heat of the moment? Many gazes fell on her. Her eyes quickly turned red, and her expression was full of grievance. I don't have the right. If he doesn't like it, the promise of elders and childhood sweethearts are all in vain. If he likes it, even if it's someone from the outside world, he wouldn't mind. What am I? With that, she stomped her feet and quickly left. Hey! Ziyuan! Liang Xiaoxiao shouted and anxiously said to the people around her. What are you waiting for? Hurry up and chase after her. The few of them quickly followed her. Liang Xiaoxiao walked a few steps, then looked back at Lu Yintong. We'll remember today's score. With that, her figure quickly disappeared from everyone's sight. Lu Yintong's face turned pale. Only then did she realize what she had just done. Chu Luyue crossed her arms, her slender fingers tapping lightly, the tip of her brows raised slightly. Was she slandering her in front of everyone? Digression. It's the end of the month. The various stars haven't appeared yet. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1179. There was dead silence. Because of this sudden commotion, the originally lively mountain became cold and silent. Many people looked at each other with different expressions. The words that Jiang Jiwon said just now. There was too much information. An agreement between elders, childhood sweethearts. Didn't that mean that she and Rongxiu were engaged by their elders a long time ago? It was only because someone snatched her away that they didn't get together? And, the princess consort of the Yuntian Tower was actually an outsider? Although Elder Bo Yen and the others already knew about the news from the Yuntian Tower, it wasn't spread. Many people in the academy didn't know about it. That was why they were so shocked when they heard it. Gradually, the crowd started to talk about it. I heard that the princess consort of the Yuntian Tower had a mysterious background. I didn't expect her to be an outsider. Let alone senior brother Rongxiu. Such a person isn't even qualified to be with a third-rate family in the Divine Ruins world, right? TSK, I really don't know what senior brother Rongxiu is thinking. Did he reject his engagement with Jiang Jiwon and marry another woman? Jiang Jiwon and senior brother Rongxiu don't have an engagement, right? If they did, according to her personality, she would have announced it long ago. Even if they didn't, it should be about the same. After all, she was raised in the Yuntian Tower by their clan leader since she was young. It's obvious that she's being groomed to be the future princess consort of the Yuntian Tower. Unfortunately, I'm a little curious. I wonder what kind of woman could catch the eye of senior brother Rongxiu. Everyone was talking. Chu Luyue turned a deaf ear to them and walked to the mouth of the spring. Well, no matter what, everyone had left, leaving a big empty space. Dumpling flew down and stood on a rock beside the mouth of the spring. It lowered its head and drank. If it weren't for the fact that there were so many people around, it would have already charged in. Chu Luyue smiled when he saw how happy it was. He looked up at Lu Yintong. Senior sister Lu, many thanks. If it wasn't for Lu Yintong, things would have been a little tricky. Her voice brought Lu Yintong back to her senses. She raised her head subconsciously. Lu Yintong's heart sank when she saw the smiling young man standing beside the spring. He did it on purpose. This Chu Yu, he clearly did it on purpose. He must have expected that there would be a fight over the position next to the mouth of the spring, so he deliberately brought her along. She had become his target. She had offended those people for him. In the future, even if they pursued the matter, those people would only find trouble with her. As for Chu Yu, he had obtained all the benefits and could still sit back and relax. Lu Yintong wanted to explode. She wanted to scream hysterically. However, in the end, all that was left in her heart was despair. She couldn't do that. She had no reason. There had never been a moment when Lu Yintong regretted what she had done that day as much as she did now. From the beginning, she shouldn't have made that bet. She shouldn't have agreed to the conditions that Chu Yu had proposed. But now, it was too late to say anything. Thinking of the warning that Liang Xiaoxiao and the others had given her before they left, she gradually felt uneasy. Jiang Jiwan alone wasn't that difficult to deal with, but there were so many of them. Moreover, she still had the Yuntian Tower's clan leader behind her. Thinking of this, her legs finally went weak and she almost fell to the ground. Ah, Tong. Gong Sheng hurriedly supported her. His brows were tightly knitted and his eyes were filled with worry. Ah, Tong, I'll send you back first. Lu Yintong nodded with difficulty. Gong Sheng looked at Chu Luyue and said in a deep voice, "Junior brother Chu Yu, don't think that you can completely remove yourself from this matter. If anything happens to Ah Tong in the future, you definitely won't be able to escape." With that, he supported Lu Yintong and left. Chu Luyue lowered his head and glanced at Dumpling. "Dumpling, for you, I've offended everyone I could." Dumpling quickly raised her head. Her eyes were bright, and there seemed to be a silver tianlei flickering in the depths of her eyes. Chu Luyue couldn't help but smile. The effect at the mouth of the spring was really obvious. Dumpling was already very strong. I wonder what she would be like when her bloodline power fully awakens? While Dumpling was devouring the power in the spring, Chu Luyue wasn't idle either. The concentration of origin power on Thousand Wine Mountain was also very high. Perhaps it was because there was a lot of tianlei stored in the spring, but the origin power was somewhat different from the outside. Chu Luyue simply sat cross-legged and began to cultivate in peace. She was indeed getting closer and closer to breaking through to the middle stage of the 9th rank. In fact, she could already feel the invisible barrier. It was as if she could break it with just a little bit of force. Chu Luyue was waiting for that opportunity. Seeing Chu Luyue so calm and composed, the others on the mountain felt even more strange. Speaking of which, the source of today's dispute was still Chu Yu. Lu Yintong and Jiang Jiwan had completely fallen out, but he acted as if nothing had happened. Not only did he allow his contracted divine beast to drink the spring water, he even started to cultivate on the spot. Just what kind of confidence did he have to be so calm and collected? If he didn't have a backer, they wouldn't have heard of him. If it wasn't for his strong mental fortitude, this would have been proven several times since he entered the academy. Originally, some people wanted to go up and greet him, but when they thought of what happened tonight, they gave up. Offending Lu Yintong wasn't enough, and now there was also Jiang Jiwan. Although the two of them were the ones who fell out, as long as Jiang Jiwan calmed down, Chu would more or less be implicated. After thinking about it, most people chose to stay away. Thousand Wine Mountain gradually quieted down. On another mountain, Elder Wensi was tidying up the ancient books that he had treasured for many years in his room. There was a thin layer of dust on the bookshelf. It was obvious that no one had touched it for a long time. Elder Wensi waved his sleeve and swept away all the dust on it. Looking at the flying dust, his eyes were a little blurred, and he muttered to himself in a low voice, "That's right. It's been a long time since someone came to peek, knock knock." There was a knock on the door. Elder Wensi put away his thoughts and looked up. The door opened, and a familiar figure was leaning against the door frame. "Huafeng. Why are you here again?" Elder Wensi secretly heaved a sigh of relief, but a trace of impatience appeared on his face. From the corner of his eye, he saw Elder Huafeng holding a wine pot in his hand. "Go back and drink by yourself." As Elder Wensi spoke, he was about to chase him away. "Why are you wandering around so late at night?" He walked over and was about to close the door when he smelled a strong smell of alcohol. It was the smell of Elder Huafeng. Elder Wensi frowned in disdain. "Why are you drinking so much?" "Let me say this first, I don't accept drunkards, Wensi." Elder Huafeng suddenly spoke. He wasn't drunk at all. He slowly exhaled. "Tell me, why hasn't that scourge appeared yet?" Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. You're tuning in to the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.